Chapter 890. Li Yundong followed up step by step, forcing Kaisai Hikari into a dead end and forcing him to give in. Although Kaisai Hikari was shrewd and astute, his vital parts were vital parts. Either he couldn't hit him, or if he hit him, he would be killed in one blow. Moreover, if Kaisai Hikari hadn't been sitting in the position of the great monk of Zhenyan Tantrism, Li Yundong wouldn't have been able to persuade him to give in even if he had fought with him. If he hadn't been too worried about the safety of Zhenyan Tantrism and couldn't afford to lose it all, he would never have been beaten to death by Li Yundong's words. As the saying goes, one's ass determines one's head. This was the truth. No matter how smart a person was, there would be times when his brain short-circuited. Moreover, a person's way of thinking and behavior sometimes did not depend on what he wanted to do, but on what he should do in his position. When Kaisai Hikari heard that Li Yundong had promised to take away the Wisdom King's Dharmakaya and not to keep the purple gold Luo Yin in Mount Koya, he really wanted to worship Li Yundong as a living Buddha. He quickly said, "Your Highness, in your opinion, where should the immovable Wisdom King's Dharmakaya be?" Li Yundong said with a smile, "Your Excellency is too modest. This Mount Koya is your Taoist field. You don't know where the Dharmakaya is. How can you ask me?" Kaisai Hikari said with a wry smile, "Your Highness, if we knew where the Dharmakaya was, how could we have been beaten so badly by the mystical silver fox?" Li Yundong asked with a smile, "Your Excellency, let me ask you, what is the Dharmakaya?" Kaisai Hikari was stunned, but he didn't expect that Li Yundong would suddenly ask him why. He had been very Buddhist since he was a child. At the age of 4 he could write. At the age of 6, he could recite 16 Buddhist scriptures. At the age of 8, he was familiar with the classics of Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism. At the age of 10, he could annotate his own new explanations. He was known as a genius of Zhenyan Tantrism that had not been seen in 50 years. If he fought with others, he would indeed be unable to defeat many people. But if someone argued with him about Buddhism, Kaisai Hikari knew that he would not lose to anyone in the world. He paused for a moment, then said without hesitation, "Dharmakaya refers to the Dharma of the Buddha, the leakless Dharma of the Buddha, and the Buddha's true self, which is the Tathagata Sutra." His reaction could not be said to be slow, and the answer he gave could not be said to be inaccurate. Although many of the people sitting in the motionless lecture hall were his students and disciples, they were also eminent monks. They knew that the answers given by Kaisai Hikari were concise and comprehensive, and they could not pick out any mistakes. Su Chan came from the Fox Zen school. Although most of the disciples of the Fox Zen school practiced Taoism, the Fox Zen school originated from Buddhism. Although Ao Wushuang did not practice both Buddhism and Taoism, she had read a lot of books about Buddhism and Taoism. Naturally, her disciple Su Chan had also read a lot of Buddhist classics. Of course, she understood what she meant. Although Zhou Qin had entered the Tao late, she had worked hard to catch up and cultivated hard. Her master practiced both Buddhism and Taoism, so she had naturally read a lot of Buddhist classics. Needless to say, Zi Yuan and Ruan Hongling were both inner disciples. They had read a lot of poetry and books since they were young, and they had also done a lot of research on Buddhism. Only Lin Miao had become a monk halfway through. In the eyes of foreigners, she was an expert in China, but in the eyes of those who were truly knowledgeable, she was not even half a bucket of water. Kaisai Hikari's words made her eyes widen. She knew what each word meant, but when they were put together, a large number of Buddhist terms appeared. She didn't understand what they meant at all. Lin Miao was a Westerner. She was straightforward and didn't beat around the bush. If she didn't understand, she would immediately ask. She asked Zi Yuan in a low voice, "Zi Yuan, what does he mean? What is the proper method? What is the leakless method? What is the Tathagata Sutra?" Zi Yuan was gentle and broad-minded. She did not reject Lin Miao just because she was a blonde with blue eyes. At this time, seeing that she was eager to learn, she explained in a low voice, in the Kusha Luen, "It is said that in all the realms, the flow is continuous, and the leakage is endless, so it is called leakage. The 5 books of Mahayana Sutra says that the flow is endless, and it is like a sore leakage, so it is called leakage. The Dharma Flower Sutra says that the clouds in the cloud leak life and death. Therefore, as the name implies, leakage refers to the leakage of human intentions. The reason why people leak is because the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind are not clean. Because a person's body will constantly leak vitality because of these 4 eyes, ears, nose, and tongue. Sometimes people are in a bad mood, and their emotions are irritable. They will also consume vitality and leak vitality. This is caused by the impurity of the body and mind. Therefore, the leakless method refers to the pure method of eradicating troubles and dirt. Ruan Hongling, who was standing to one side, also said, "Yes, the leakless body of Taoism is also similar to the leakless theory of Buddhism." Lin Miao was confused. She asked with her eyes straight, "What about the Tathagata Sutra?" Zi Yuan smiled slightly and said, "The Tathagata Sutra refers to the Buddha's mind, that is, permanent, wonderful, immovable, circumferential, and wonderful as one's mind." Lin Miao couldn't help asking again, then. What is permanent, wonderful, immovable, circumferential, and wonderful as one's mind? Zi Yuan went on to say, permanent refers to not going and not coming. Immobility refers to not being born and not being destroyed. Miaoming refers to being silent and always shining. Circumference refers to being perfect and all-encompassing. Miraculous refers to being able to give birth to all kinds of methods and all kinds of wonderful qualities. Lin Miao couldn't help but smile bitterly. She realized that she seemed to have asked more questions. What did it mean to not go and not come? What did it mean to be immortal and not perish? What did it mean to be silent and always shine? She suddenly found that she had entered a vast sea of knowledge and a brand new world. Everything was extremely strange and mysterious. Lin Miao was strong. She didn't feel depressed because of her ignorance. Instead, she became even more excited, as if there was a huge mountain waiting for her to climb in front of her. Li Yundong, who was standing to one side, was not only talking to Kaisei Hikari, but also secretly observing Su Chan, Zi Yuan, and the others. Seeing that Lin Miao was eager to learn, he was moved in his heart and then asked, "Your Excellency, your explanation is right, but as far as I know, all the Buddhas in the sky have Dharmakaya, and their Dharmakaya is different, so each Buddhist sect has a different understanding of Dharmakaya. I wonder what the Dharmakaya of the Zhenyan Tantrism refers to?" Gu Ziguanji naturally didn't believe that the reincarnated Wisdom King would not know what the Dharmakaya of the various Buddhist sects referred to. Hearing Li Yundong's question, he thought that Li Yundong was testing him, so he said without hesitation, "The Dharmakaya of our Zhenyan Tantrism refers to the Dharmakaya of earth, water, wind, fire, space, and consciousness. These are the Dharmakaya of the Vairocana." Li Yundong said with a smile, "Then I would like to ask Your Excellency, in the Zhenyan Tantrism, where are the Dharmakaya of earth, water, wind, fire, space, and consciousness of Vairocana?" Kaisei Hikari's heart skipped a beat, and he suddenly realized something. He immediately prostrated himself on the ground, and his face was full of excitement. "Your Highness the Wisdom King is shouting at me with great righteousness. It's really like thunder in my ears. It's like a morning bell and evening drum, making me suddenly enlightened." Li Yundong's seemingly casual words were nothing more than an ordinary question in the ears of a careless person. However, in the ears of Kaisei Hikari, it was no different from the sound of nature, allowing him to understand a lot of principles. At the Spiritual Mountain Conference, Mahabrahma offered a golden pineapple flower to Buddha and asked Buddha to preach. However, Sakyamuni Buddha didn't say a word. He just used the pineapple flower to show the public, calm and serene. At that time, all the people and gods in the meeting could not understand the meaning of Buddha. Only the eldest disciple of Buddha, the ancestor of Zen, Mahakassapa, understood its meaning. He smiled slightly. Therefore, Sakyamuni gave the flower to Kassapa and told him, "I have the eyes of righteousness, the wonderful heart of nirvana, and the subtle dharma. I don't write words, and I don't teach outside the sect. I will pass on the method of heart affecting heart to you." After that, all the gods and Buddhas were wondering why this venerable Kassapa understood and why he smiled. Some people asked him, but venerable Kassapa said, "I don't know why I smiled. I just saw Buddha smiling, so I smiled." This sentence almost made all the gods and Buddhas vomit blood. It was like a person squatting on the side of the road with his eyebrows slightly frowned and his face deep. This expression immediately attracted the attention of a beautiful woman, so she left behind the rich young master who was pursuing her and turned to pursue the cool man. When the man got along with her, the beautiful woman asked later, "What were you thinking that day? Why were you so deep?" The man said, "I happened to have hemorrhoids that day, and my chrysanthemum was a little painful." This was simply too shocking. But sometimes Buddhism was like this. If you didn't discuss it, others might think of an answer that they thought was correct for a long time, but it might not necessarily be favored. people would just treat it as a fart. But a casual action of a person sometimes made Buddhist cultivators think it was full of deep meaning. Gu Shiguang was so excited that his whole body was trembling. He stood up, put his palms together, and bowed to Li Yunyang, saying, "Thank you, Your Highness, for enlightening me. Please come with me. I know where the Dharmakaya of Wisdom King is." As he said this, he turned around and walked out of the motionless lecture hall. The eminent monks in the hall looked at each other, not understanding what the great monk had understood. They all racked their brains in fear and trepidation, thinking, what mysterious Buddhist Dharma is in the reincarnated Wisdom King's words that can make the great monk so excited? None of them could figure it out, but they didn't dare to say that they didn't understand. They were afraid that others would understand it, and they would lose face if they didn't understand it. So they had to follow the great monk respectfully, thinking to themselves as they walked. After walking for a while, they found that they were going to the core forbidden area of Mount Koya, the Okanoin. Suddenly, some monks shouted loudly, "I understand." It turns out that the Dharmakaya is referring to this place. These monks suddenly figured out this truth, and they were all so excited that they couldn't control themselves. Some of them even had tears in their eyes and kowtowed to Li Yunyang. Lin Miao was dumbfounded and asked with a stutter, "What on earth did they understand? Why don't I understand anything?" As she said this, she asked Ruan Hongling guiltily, "What do you understand?" Ruan Hongling shrugged her shoulders, curled her lips, and said with a sarcastic smile, "The only thing I understand is that Li Yunyang probably doesn't know himself, so he's playing riddles with these monks. He just casually said a few words to make these monks fall head over heels. Tut, when this person's status reaches a certain level, others will feel that even his fart is fragrant." Zi Yuan glared at her and shouted in a low voice, "Hongling, how can you talk behind someone's back like this?" Ruan Hongling made a face at Zi Yuan and said, "Well, I know. I won't speak ill of him behind his back." As she said this, she immediately giggled again and said, "I'll say it face to face." They were talking and laughing behind his back, but at this time, Li Yunyang had already arrived at the forbidden area of Zhenyan Tantrism in Mount Koya, the Okanoin. He suppressed the excitement in his heart. When he was about to enter, he heard Tachibana Wakako, who was accompanying him, suddenly ask strangely, "Wisdom King, if you take away the Dharmakaya of earth, water, wind, fire, space, and consciousness, what about our Zhenyan Tantrism?" This sentence made everyone's heart skip a beat. Li Yundong was even more worried in his heart. There are so many eminent monks here, but none of them can see the mystery. But this naive little girl has revealed the secret of heaven. I really don't know whether to cry or laugh. Chapter 891. Tachibana Wakako's words suddenly made the atmosphere extremely stiff and awkward. Kaisai Hikaryuni was suddenly stunned. He had expected a lot of things before, but now he was completely stunned. "You almost there? Yes. If Li Yundong takes away the Dharmakaya of Wisdom King, what about Zhenyan Tantrism?" For a moment, the monks in front of the Okuyuan looked at each other, and the expressions of the monks who had admired Li Yundong before froze. At this time, Tachibana Wakako saw that the atmosphere was strange. She also secretly realized that she seemed to have said something wrong. When she was a little embarrassed and didn't know what to do, she suddenly heard a woman's voice coming from the Okinoyuan. It was elegant and peaceful. "Wakako, are you outside? Who else is out there?" Kaisai Hikaryuni suddenly thought of the consequences of Li Yunyang taking away Wisdom King's Fa's hen, but after all, he had said too much before. Now he wanted to go back on his words, but he didn't know what to say. Just when he had no chance to speak, he heard the voice. He immediately bowed slightly and said, "Lord Tsuruko Tachibana, I'm outside. His Highness the Immovable Wisdom King is also with me." Tsuruko Tachibana suddenly exclaimed in the inner room, and then there was a rustling sound of footsteps in the room. After a while, the wooden door was gently opened. It was a beautiful woman in a white kimono. She smiled and nodded to Kaisai Hikaryuni, then looked at Li Yunyang curiously with her beautiful eyes. Then she knelt on the tatami, bowed deeply, and said, "Tsuruko Tachibana pays his respects to Wisdom King, Your Highness." His eyes passed over Tsuruko Tachibana and saw Masako Tachibana behind him at a glance. This female expert, who had been defeated by him, was obviously a little embarrassed when she saw him again. She was a little evasive, but at this time, seeing that she couldn't avoid it, she stepped forward, knelt on the ground, and bent down to say, "Masako Tachibana, the loser, greets your highness the wise king. Li Yundong smiled and returned the salute. At this moment, Tsuruko Tachibana took Tachibana Wakako's hand and asked, "What were you talking about just now? What six-legged bodies?" No matter how stupid Tachibana Wakako was, she knew that she had said something wrong. She was afraid that she had caused trouble. At this time, Li Yunyang smiled calmly and said, "Sister Tsuruko Tachibana, we are talking about the Dharmakaya of the immovable Wisdom King in this Aoyuan." Tsuruko Tachibana asked curiously, "The Dharmakaya of the immovable Wisdom King? In the Ao courtyard? Why didn't I know about this?" She lived in this Ao Yuan all year round, but never knew that the immovable Wisdom King's Dharma body was actually here. Naturally she felt very strange, like a person begging for food every day, but never knew that she was wearing a string of priceless jewels around her neck. Tsuruko Tachibana asked Kaisai Hikaryuni curiously, "Great monk, why is the Wisdom King's Dharmakaya in the Okanoin?" Kaisai Hikaryuni bowed slightly and said, "The immovable Wisdom King's Dharmakaya is divided into six-legged bodies, namely, earth, water, wind, fire, space, and consciousness. At the same time, the Okanoin is located in the hinterland of Mount Koya, where there are small streams running on both sides of the Okanoin, which is in line with the water law. At the same time, the Okanoin is located in the north facing south, and there are dense and exuberant trees on both sides, and only the stone roads on the north and south sides can be passed through by the wind, which is in line with the wind law. And under the Okanoin, there is earth fire, which is equivalent to sitting on the stove, which is in line with the fire law. At the same time, although the Okanoin is small, covering an area of only a few hundred meters, the hidden realm of magic power here is infinite. Just like the so-called mustard seed contains Mount Sumeru, which is the truth, which is in line with the air law. Finally, the Okanoin has always been the graveyard for the eminent monks and celebrities of the past. The strength of the spiritual force is unparalleled in Japan, which is in line with the knowledge law." Kaisai Hikaryuni spoke with confidence. He pointed at the Okanoin and said, "There is no other place in Mount Koya where the six laws can be combined at the same time except for the Okanoin." At this time, some of the monks who had not understood suddenly understood. They all touched their foreheads with their hands and said, "So that's how it is. So that's what His Highness Wisdom King meant. Thanks to the great monk Masayoshi, we can understand." Su-chan blinked a few times and looked at Li Yundong in confusion. She couldn't help but whisper, "Yundong, did you find the Wisdom King's Dharmakaya here last time you came to fight?" Li Yundong chuckled. He reached out and wanted to pinch the little girl's pink nose, but because there were outsiders around, he put his hand down halfway. He winked at the little girl and said in a low voice, "What do you think?" The little girl tilted her head and thought for a moment. "I don't think you know, do you?" Li Yundong laughed and said, "If I knew, why would I have to beat around the bush with this old monk?" Only then did the little girl understand. She looked at Kaisai Hikaryuni hesitantly and said in a low voice, "But, aren't you afraid that they will go back on their word now?" Li Yundong smiled and said, "Don't worry. With me here, they can't go back on their word." As he said this, he walked up and said, "Master Kaisai Hikaryuni is really smart. You can think of the location of the Wisdom King's Dharmakaya so quickly. You deserve to be called the Great Monk." Kaisai Hikaryuni also bowed slightly to Li Yundong and said with an embarrassed expression, "I don't dare." As Sister Tachibana Wakako said, "If His Highness Wisdom King takes away the six laws, what will happen to our Koya Tantrism?" Li Yundong had expected him to say this, so he smiled and said, "May I ask Master Kaisai Hikaryuni, what is law?" Kaisai Hikaryuni was stunned again, and then said, "Law is the extremely immortal truth of all things in the universe. It is cause, virtue, religion, and matter." Li Yundong said with a smile, "May I ask Master, what is cause, virtue, religion, and matter?" When everyone heard this, they saw that Li Yundong was asking Kaisai Hikaryuni about Buddhism again. They immediately pricked up their ears, for fear that they would miss a word and miss the true method. This was the reincarnation of Wisdom King preaching. This was the only time in 1,000 years. In the face of the reincarnation of Wisdom King's question, Kaisai Hikaryuni thought very carefully and said, "The saying is cause, which refers to the Buddhist Dharma, that is, the correct relationship of cause and effect. This is the meaning of the so-called origin is the law. The saying is virtue, which refers to ethics and morality, good or bad. The Buddhist Dharma says that all things are in order, and the Dharma realm is constant. It refers to ethics, And there is a saying that if you put down the butcher's knife and become a Buddha, it refers to morality, good or bad. The saying is teaching, which refers to the teaching method, that is, the 84,000 methods in the Buddhist Dharma. The last saying is matter, which means that all matter and non-matter are laws. Li Yundong nodded with a smile and said, "Yes, then let me ask you. Am I the reincarnation of Wisdom King?" Kaisai Hikaryuni bowed respectfully and said, "Of course." Li Yundong nodded and said, "Since I am the reincarnation of Wisdom King, what's wrong with me taking away my Fa's hen? Since I am the reincarnation of Wisdom King, that is the cause. This Fa's hen is here with you, and it is the effect. I want to come here to take away the Fa's hen, which is cause and effect. And I took away the Fa's hen of Wisdom King in order to destroy the mystical silver fox and save your cultivation sects that have been harmed by the mystical silver fox. This is virtue." At the same time, when the Fa's hen of Wisdom King was here, you didn't notice it at all. If I want to take it away now, will your 84,000 methods be reduced by one? When Kaisai Hikaryuni heard this, he was stunned. He faintly felt that something was wrong, and he felt that Li Yundong was being unreasonable. Although his words were very reasonable, after careful consideration, he felt that something was wrong. However, if he wanted to refute, he didn't know where to start. What's more, Li Yundong spoke very quickly, which made him even more confused. At this time, Li Yundong said, "Finally, it is said that everything is material and non-material. If I take away the material and non-material of your Mount Koya, it does seem a little inappropriate. But, Master, I dare to ask you, can those who are calculative become Buddhas? If you don't give up this Fa's hen at this time, I'm afraid you will lose more in the future." Hearing this, Kaisai Hikaryuni almost spat out a mouthful of blood. It was like a robber rushing into a temple and robbing the most precious thing in the temple. The monks resisted with all their might, but the robber said plausibly, "Masters, if you are so calculative, how can you become Buddhas in the future? Learn from Sakyamuni." When he saw that the eagle wanted to eat roe, he cut off his roe and fed it to the eagle. Only such a person could become Buddhas. This was simply the most shameless thing in the world. However, Li Yundong's words were righteous and dignified. His face was even more righteous, as if it was about to emit Buddha's light. His face was dignified, solemn, and dignified. When Su Chan, Zi Yuan, Zhou Qin, and the others saw this, they couldn't help but secretly praise him. But they didn't know whether they were praising Li Yundong's eloquence or his cheekiness, which was rare in the world. The worst thing was that at this time, Tsuruko Tachibana also put his palms together and said with admiration, "As expected of your Highness Wisdom King. Listening to your words is better than reading books for 10 years. If you don't give up, how can you get something?" Kaisai Hikaryuni didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He wished he could grab Tsuruko Tachibana and scold him. "You old woman, did you eat something wrong? You can just say it in your stomach. How can you say it in public?" Unexpectedly, at this time, Masako Tachibana also nodded and said, "Yes, your Highness Wisdom King is right." Kaisai Hikaryuni couldn't help but let out a long sigh. His heart was full of tears, and he thought that the big thing was over, but his face was full of shame. He said, "Your Highness Wisdom King's words have woken me up. I'll open the way for your Highness and lead you to find your Wisdom King's Dharmakaya." Li Yundong looked around, smiled, and said, "No need. I can get the Wisdom King's Dharmakaya here." Kaisai Hikaryuni was stunned. "Right here? Your Highness, do you need us to protect you?" Li Yundong chuckled and said, "This Taoist field is the Taoist field of the immovable Wisdom King. There are laws everywhere. Why do you need protection?" Li Yundong hadn't figured out what the Wisdom King's Dharmakaya was before, but at this time, after talking to Kaisai Hikaryuni, he had already understood it. In front of everyone, he smiled slightly and said, "Earth, water, wind, fire, space and consciousness are the 6 bodies of my Wisdom King, so..." Li Yundong raised his hand and said with a smile, "Crack the earth." With a loud bang, Mount Koya trembled violently, and then the earth cracked violently, as if a giant was tearing the earth with all his might, tearing a huge hole. A yellow mist rose from the huge hole and surrounded Li Yundong. Then, Li Yundong waved his hand around and said, "Water rises." In an instant, everyone heard the sound of water splashing around them. Countless streams in Mount Koya gathered in one place, like rivers returning to the sea. They rushed to Li Yunyong's side and turned into a green water vapor, entangled with the yellow mist, floating and rotating. Li Yundong quickly said, "Fengxing." Everyone immediately heard the whistling sound around them, and gusts of wind came from all directions, like countless sharp blades. But when they rushed in front of Li Yunyong, they immediately stopped and turned into a gentle breeze, turning into white smoke, gathering together with the earth qi and water qi from before. At this time, Li Yundong shouted continuously, "Huashing! Kongxiang!" Everyone saw that in an instant, countless magma and raging fire gushed out of the cracks in the ground, instantly swallowing Li Yundong's whole body. However, Li Yundong remained motionless in the raging fire. He pinched the fundamental seal with both hands, and the golden light around him was bright. Water and fire could not invade him. As soon as the fire qi came into contact with the previous 3 qis, it immediately boiled violently. The 4 colored qis twisted into a ball, like elixirs being refined in a furnace. Then, the 4 streams of spiritual qi became bigger and bigger, and then they soared into the sky like a 4-colored beam of light. With a loud bang, they rushed straight into the sky, seeming to poke a huge hole in the sky. The clouds in the middle of the beam of light were rolling and rotating, which was magnificent. A human figure could be vaguely seen in the beam of light. The figure was vague, and only a rough outline could be vaguely recognized. At this time, Li Yundong put his hands together again, pinched a handprint, and shouted, "Sense gathering." In an instant, countless ghosts that had been buried in Mount Koya for thousands of years suddenly rushed out of the tombstones and followed the 4-colored beam of light up. At first, they were all dark and gray ghosts and vengeful spirits, but when they rushed to the sky and then descended, they all turned into golden gods, as if they had ascended to become Buddhas. As the undead that had fallen from the sky gathered together one by one, the phos hen in the beam of light gradually became more and more obvious and clear. When everyone took a closer look, they saw that it was clearly an immovable wisdom king with dark skin and an intelligent sword in his hand. When the last undead gathered on the forehead of the immovable wisdom king, it made up for the black eyeball in the vertical pupil on his forehead. This was like a finishing touch. The eyes of the wisdom king's phos hen in midair moved. As soon as he lowered his head, a golden light shot out of his eyes and shone straight down. At this moment, there was a huge bang in the sky, and a clear and distant sound of Buddha rang in the ears of countless people. It was like the sound of Buddha's Dharma coming from the distant heaven. The penetrating power was so strong that it seemed to penetrate everyone's soul. At this time, not only were all the people of Zhenyan Tantrism stunned, but also the tourists of Mount Koya were stunned. They looked up at the sky in a daze and couldn't help saying, "My God! What's going on?" Chapter 892. The last time Li Yundong came to Mount Koya, he was not a master of thunder retribution. He could not understand the mysteries of the universe. Naturally, he could not achieve the supreme realm of moving heaven and earth with a single thought. Therefore, at that time, he did not know that the Dharmakaya of wisdom was in the Taoist field of Mount Koya, and even if he understood it, there was nothing he could do. If his cultivation was not high enough, he could not move it away even if he had a mountain of gold. Although he had defeated Masako Tachibana with the power of the immovable wisdom king of Mount Koya in that battle, he could not control this power. He could not achieve the realm of unity of heaven and man himself, so he could not perfectly integrate it with the 6 bodies. He could only leave this power here, unable to take it away or use it. But now that Li Yundong had understood the mystery of the 6 bodies, he understood that the Dharmakaya of the immovable wisdom king was composed of the 6 bodies of wind, water, earth, fire, and space. The 6 bodies referred to the outer 6 of Buddhism, that is, everything in the universe. This was secretly in line with the Taoist concept of infinite void, unity of heaven and man. At this time, Li Yundong had a good understanding of both Buddhism and Taoism. After understanding this principle, with a thought, the power that had been gathered in Mount Koya for thousands of years was immediately available for him to use. At this time, the monks on Mount Koya saw the true body of Wisdom King in midair looking down at the people in the desert. His eyebrows were tightly knitted, and a bright red flame was boiling in his majestic eyes. His face was ferocious and angry, and he was majestic. His whole body was blue and cyan. At first, he had 2 arms, one holding the wisdom sword and the other wrapped around the Vajra chain. But after a while, the true body of Wisdom King changed into 4 arms, each holding the immovable Wisdom King's fundamental seal. From a distance, he was really like an unshakable towering mountain, which made people feel a sense of worship at first sight. The eminent monks of Mount Koya had been seeking Buddha all their lives, not only to spread the Dharma to all living beings, but also to hope that they could ascend to the heaven realm in the future and become one of the gods and Buddhas. Although they were very utilitarian, why did monks eat vegetarian and chant Buddha all day long? If every single one of them was indifferent to fame and fortune, then what was the point of resisting when the other sects attacked them? They could just obediently stretch out their necks and let the other party chop them off. Everyone thought that the people of Buddhism were mostly indifferent to fame and fortune, and that the people of Taoism were modest, peaceful, and aloof from worldly affairs. However, in reality, the competition between Buddhism and Taoism in terms of cultivation, preaching, and profit was extremely fierce. This could be seen in the history of any country, be it the Western Crusades, or the Eastern Taoists and Buddhists Dharmakayas, they could all be seen. A soldier who does not want to be a general is not a good soldier. A monk who does not want to be a deity is not a good monk. Buddha says, life is like a thicket of thorns. Chanting sutras for 1,000 days, praying to Buddha for 10,000 days. For what? Wasn't it all for the sake of meeting the gods and Buddhas and praying that the gods and Buddhas would take him all the way to the Western paradise, so that he could be free from the sea of suffering in the human world? However, in front of them, this genuine Buddha had appeared right under their noses. Furthermore, he was the king of all wisdom kings, the immovable wisdom king of all wisdom kings. This really shocked the monks of Mount Koya to the point that they couldn't control themselves. Although the eminent monks accompanying Kaisai Hikaryuni knew that Li Yundong was the reincarnated wisdom king, this reincarnated wisdom king was just a title. It was as if someone had given them a check with a huge amount of money written on it. However, the monks of Mount Koya were also rich and used to seeing money. Although there was a lot of money, it was just a string of numbers. However, if this mountain of real money was placed in front of them, they could not help but change their expressions. At this time, the eminent monks beside Li Yundong were all prostrating on the ground. They did not dare to look at the real body of Wisdom King in the sky. Those monks who were not qualified to follow him sat cross-legged on the ground and began to recite the Diamond Sutra loudly. At this time, the Buddhist bells, conches, bowls, and bronze statues all over Mount Koya rang at the same time. They made a buzzing sound, which merged with the sound of the Buddhist scriptures and rose into the sky. It could be heard clearly from more than 10 miles away. The tourists who came to Mount Koya to worship Buddha were all stunned at this time. Many people took out their mobile phones to take pictures of this wonder that had not been seen in 100 years, and many devout believers prostrated on the ground and kowtowed. Even Kaisai Hikaryuni, who was a little unwilling in his heart, had to lower his head and recite the Buddhist scriptures devoutly. After the Dharmakaya of Wisdom King in the air showed its majesty, another golden light fell from the sky and shone on the Dharmakaya of Wisdom King and Li Yundong. In an instant, the Dharmakaya of Wisdom King shattered with a bang and turned into countless golden fine powder, scattering in all directions. Some of the monks who were still chanting saw the golden powder floating around, and immediately stood up in excitement. They hopped up and down, wanting to grab more of the golden powder. It was as though by doing so, they would be able to absorb a strand of the Akala's aura, and their future cultivation would be higher. When the tourists of Mount Koya saw that these monks were like this, they were even more unwilling to show weakness. For a time, there were people running and jumping everywhere on Mount Koya. The Kongabuji temple was as lively as a big pot full of dumplings. Because of their respected status, Kaisai Hikaryuni and the other monks naturally could not do such a rude thing because of their face. They could only resist the impulse in their hearts and continue chanting in a low voice. Soon, Su-chan looked around in surprise and couldn't help saying, "Ah, why did the Dharmakaya of Wisdom King disperse?" She wanted to ask Li Yundong, but she saw him standing in the golden light. His whole body was shining with golden light, and he was so dignified that he was speechless. For a moment, she was afraid and didn't dare to go forward. She pulled Zi Yuan's sleeve and whispered, "Sister Zi Yuan, what should we do if Yundong's Dharmakaya disappears? If he is caught by these guys, won't he suffer a big loss?" Zi Yuan smiled and said in a low voice, "Don't be silly. Let me ask you, what is the unity of heaven and man, what is the infinite void, and what is the origin?" Zhang Zhishuan had taught Su-chan, Zi Yuan, and Zhou Qin these questions in the hotel. At this time, hearing Zi Yuan's words, Su-chan immediately understood. The little girl was smart and intelligent. She didn't understand it before because she cared about it. Now that someone else pointed it out, she immediately understood. The 6 Dharmakaya came from all things in the universe. To put it bluntly, it was the combination of matter and spirit. The first five, wind, water, earth, and fire, refer to the four elements in the universe. Buddhists believe that all the actual matter in the universe was composed of these four elements. So there was the saying, the four elements are all void. The latter two, void and lob, referred to space and spirit, which were illusory things. Li Yundong's Dharmakaya came from these six. At this time, it was scattered everywhere, and it returned to the original universe. This was the infinite void in the Taoist concept, the realm of the unity of heaven and man. Su Chan understood that Li Yundong's Dharmakaya had been branded with his own Zhenfa mark, and it was hidden between heaven and earth. Although it couldn't be seen on normal days, if he were to fight, with a single thought, the Dharmakaya hidden between heaven and earth would immediately appear. When the little girl saw that Li Yundong had finally obtained his Wisdom King's Dharmakaya, she felt a little happy in her heart. But for some reason, when she looked at Li Yundong, who was shining with golden light and looking solemn, she felt a sense of unfamiliarity and fear. Now, Yundong can be considered a complete immovable Wisdom King, right? However, motionless Wisdom King is the Wisdom King who subdues demons and subdues devils. The great might Wisdom King who frightens evil demons and devils. Will he not recognize me? This was not the first time that this thought had arisen in the little girl's heart. She watched Li Yundong become stronger and stronger, and his identity became more and more sensitive. She felt more and more insecure in her heart. But just as she was feeling anxious, she saw Li Yundong raise his palm in the golden light and shout the name of Buddha, Amitabha. This Buddha's name shook the mountains. The Buddha bell rang loudly, and the loud chanting of sutras of Mount Koya was also forcibly suppressed by him. For a moment, all the monks shut their mouths and looked at Li Yundong's figure or in his direction in horror. Li Yundong lowered his head, and his face seemed to be covered with a layer of shining light. His eyes drooped. After shouting the name of Buddha, he didn't say a word. He didn't speak, and the others didn't dare to speak. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly. In the lobby of the Aoyuan, Tsuruko Tachibana and Masako Tachibana, who had seen the wonderful scene of the Buddha's light descending into the world, couldn't help sighing. Tsuruko Tachibana put his palms together and moved his teeth slightly, as if he was chanting something. Masako Tachibana sighed softly and said, "What a powerful Wisdom King. What a profound realm. I didn't lose unjustly." Masako Tachibana knew that with Li Yundong's current realm, even if he was not the reincarnation of Wisdom King, she was no match for him at all. Masako Tachibana knew that she would never be able to reach such a realm in her lifetime. She was an extremely competitive person. Seeing that Li Yundong's cultivation was so profound, her previous thoughts became more and more hot. She waved to Tachibana Wakako, who was looking at Li Yundong with her mouth agape not far away, and said to her, "Wakako, from today on, you must find a way to become Li Yundong's disciple. If you can't learn the true inheritance, you will no longer be the successor of my Tachibana family." At this time, Tachibana Wakako had already been admiring Li Yundong. If Masako Tachibana said it a little more gently, she was afraid that she would immediately bow down to him. As for whether Li Yundong would accept it or not, it was another matter. But Masako Tachibana said it so stiffly and arrogantly. Tachibana Wakako suddenly became rebellious and said angrily, "I don't want it." At this time, there was complete silence on Mount Koya. Her words were shouted out loud, which was really clear. At this time, Li Yundong raised his head and smiled at Tachibana Wakako. Being glanced at by Li Yundong, Tachibana Wakako immediately lowered her head and didn't dare to speak again. Although she didn't contradict Masako Tachibana again, no matter how Masako Tachibana winked at her at this time, she refused to raise her head to look at her mother again. Masako Tachibana was furious in her heart. She was used to being the leader of the family. Although she restrained her emotions after the great defeat, she couldn't change her habit of bossing people around. She was about to scold her again, but Li Yundong smiled and said to her, "Sister Masako Tachibana, as the saying goes, a melon that is forcibly twisted is not sweet. Don't force her. If you want to seek Dharma and Tao, in fact, you don't have to go through so much trouble, because all the Dhamma only asks for it from the heart." As he said this, he smiled, put his palms together, and bowed to Kaisai Hikaryoshi and the eminent monks beside him. He said, "Thank you for your cooperation, masters. I'm busy going back to deal with the mystical silver fox. I'll leave first." Kaisai Hikaryoshi was depressed. "Good heavens, you came without saying hello. When you came, You took away the Wisdom King's Fa's hen of Mount Koya. Now you want to leave. Even if you are the reincarnation of Wisdom King, you can't do this, can you? However, Li Yundong's excuse made him unable to refute it. He could only smile bitterly in his heart, put his palms together, and return the salute to Li Yundong. He watched him take Su Chan and the others down the mountain. It was not until their figures disappeared that he let out a long sigh with a sad face, thinking about how to make up for this loss. As for Masako Tachibana, she stared at her daughter with disappointment. She didn't listen to what Li Yundong had said to her at all. In her opinion, this was just Li Yundong's excuse. All kinds of methods only asked for in the heart. If that was the case, all the teachers in the world should hang themselves. Masako Tachibana frowned and thought quickly. How can I make Li Yundong accept Tachibana Wakako as his disciple? Just as she and Kaisai Hikaryoshi were thinking about it, a novice monk suddenly rushed in from the mountain road. The novice monk was quite young and had never seen anything. When he came in, he almost rolled and crawled. He pointed to the foot of the mountain with a shocked face and said, "Great monk, bad news, bad news." Kaisai Hikaryoshi's face darkened. "What's wrong?" The novice monk said, "At the foot of the mountain, there are many people coming from the foot of the mountain." Kaisai Hikaryoshi was shocked and quickly asked, "What's going on?" The young novice monk said, "I don't know either." "Great monk. Go and have a look." Kaisai Hikaryoshi hurriedly rushed out of the dense forest. When he came to the mountainside, he saw that the foot of the mountain was densely packed with people, rushing to the Kongabuji temple. Although these people were fanatical, they were still in order. Many of them brought their families with them, and even their children were brought out. Moreover, all of them kowtowed 3 times and 9 times. Obviously, they were all believers. Kaisai Hikaryoshi had been in Mount Koya for many years. Although he had seen a large-scale pilgrimage of believers, he had never seen such a crazy scene. He was stunned for a moment, and soon understood that this must be the miracle of Li Yundong. The appearance of the true Buddha had caused the world to go crazy and worship him. In an instant, Kaisai Hikaryoshi thought that after this incident, Zhenyan Tantrism would be able to attract countless believers because of this incident and increase the number of devout believers. He suddenly thought of Tsuruko Tachibana's willing to give up words before, and for a moment, he sighed in his heart, but he didn't know whether it was sad or happy. Everyone, I've been too busy these days. I can only apologize. Chapter 893. After Li Yunyang obtained the Wisdom King Dharma, he slowly went down from Mount Koya. He passed by the crazy believers on the stone steps, but no one knew that this extremely young and handsome man was the reincarnated Wisdom King who had caused the previous miracle. Soon, these crazy believers had seen the miracle shake heaven and earth before, and Mount Koya seemed to have been torn in half. But when they went up the mountain, they found that Mount Koya was intact, and the Okanoin, which was full of tombstones, was still the same as before. It seemed that the earth-shattering scene just now was just an illusion. If it weren't for the fact that many eminent monks in the Okanoin were sitting cross-legged and chanting sutras, they would have thought that they were dreaming. Some people who hadn't seen the miracle in time only thought that it was an earthquake. Japan was a country with high earthquake frequency. Sometimes, it was common for several earthquakes to occur in a day. Such a geographical environment had tempered the tough nerves of the Japanese people. After they were nervous for a while, they continued to do what they should do. Only many Japanese cultivation sects soon learned about what had happened to Mount Koya, and they became very nervous. What? The reincarnated Wisdom King took away the Dharmakaya of Wisdom King in Mount Koya? And he performed a miracle? What was going on? Let's go and find out the news and see what happened. Kaisai Hikaryuni and the other eminent monks of Mount Koya felt that the Dharmakaya of the immovable Wisdom King Taoist field had been taken away, and they had suffered a great loss. However, they didn't know that the people of other sects felt that Mount Koya had taken advantage of them. The reincarnated Wisdom King had performed a miracle in Mount Koya. This time, Zhenyan Tantrism would increase many loyal believers. Moreover, with such a show, if something really happened to Zhenyan Tantrism in the future, he would put down his face and ask for help from the reincarnated Wisdom King. He believed that the reincarnated Wisdom King would not sit idly by. Would he? Although there were many dirty things between the Chinese and the Japanese, he was the reincarnated Wisdom King. He couldn't just let his Taoist field be trampled on and ignore it, could he? This was just like buying an insurance. The cultivation sects who had some ideas about Zhenyan tantrism had all stopped at this time and no longer had any crooked ideas. Was it a joke? If they went to find trouble with Zhenyan tantrism now, wouldn't they be going against the reincarnation of Wisdom King? If they couldn't get along with the reincarnated Wisdom King, when he was in a bad mood one day, he would visit them with the purple gold luopan and say with a smile, "I have observed the cultivation world of Japan. Only your sect has a deep foundation and great strength. You can take on the important task of guarding the mystical silver fox." Wouldn't that be terrible? Look at the sects that are responsible for guarding the mystical silver fox. How is the Tiantai sect now? After the sect master was heavily injured, he was at a disadvantage in the battle against the reincarnated Wisdom King and died. The patriarch of the Abe family of the Earth Imperial sect Shinto was dead. What if the mystical silver fox that he was guarding died? The cultivators of these sects thought to themselves, "No, the bald donkeys of Mount Koya have bought an insurance for themselves. They can't let the bald donkeys of Mount Koya monopolize the beauty in front of them. They have to buy this kind of insurance themselves." Although there was no Wisdom King's Dharmakaya in his Taoist field, the reincarnated Wisdom King also had to eat, drink, and drink. He would always worry about firewood, rice, oil, salt, soy sauce, vinegar, and tea, right? Even if he didn't worry, he must have his own foundation, right? If there was a foundation, there must be a place where money was needed. The cultivation sects of Japan lacked everything but money. I heard that the reincarnated Wisdom King has opened a tea house in Tiannan City. What's it called? Desanxian? The cultivators of various sects in Japan thought about it. They felt that the reincarnated Wisdom King was still a passionate person. Could it be that the Desanxian reflected the scene where the three immortals fought against the celestial fox? Oh, Wisdom King is Wisdom King. He opens a shop and goes to a shop with such foresight. What a good name. Since he opened a tea house in the downtown area, he must want to make a profit. Since he wants to make a profit, we will cater to his preferences. As a result, the cultivators of various sects in Japan, who felt that they were a little bit in danger and also measured the heart of a gentleman with their own eyes, all went straight to Tiannan City. Although they reacted quickly, it was already a day later. After Li Yundong obtained the Wisdom King's Dharmakaya in Mount Koya, he returned home and immediately chose to go into seclusion. The most important thing now was to bring Xueqi's soul out of the purple gold luopan immediately. If it was too long, Xueqi's soul would be completely integrated with the mystical silver fox. Li Yundong knew that if it weren't for the fact that Xueqi's soul had not been completely integrated with the mystical silver fox in the last battle with the mystical silver fox, it would not have been so easy to defeat her. After arriving at home, Li Yundong closed the door, turned around and said to Zi Yuan, "You guard me. I'll go into the purple gold luopan and have a look." However, Zi Yuan firmly denied it and said, "No, although you have obtained the Wisdom King's Dharmakaya and your strength is comparable to that of the mystical silver fox, it is only a tie. The victory is still 50-50. There is a 50-50 chance of winning and a 50-50 chance of losing. You can't afford to lose, and neither can we." He was not worried about Zi Yuan and Zhou Qin, but he was worried about the little girl. She was a little distracted because of the departure of her master, Ao Wushuang. Although it seemed that nothing was wrong now, Li Yundong could see the deep sadness and grief in the little girl's eyes. Time was the best medicine to heal scars. If she lived a peaceful life, the little girl would gradually forget such pain in the future. However, she might have to fight with Ao Wushuang fiercely later. If she fought with Ao Wushuang with such emotions, even if she was slightly distracted during the battle, the consequences would be unimaginable. It was even possible that they would all be wiped out. Zi Yuan, who was standing to one side, immediately understood Li Yundong's concern. She winked at Zhou Qin, Ruan Hongling, and Lin Miao, and the four of them quietly left the living room and entered the room. Seeing that Zi Yuan was so considerate, Li Yundong was secretly grateful in his heart. He nodded to Zi Yuan, who was about to enter the door, to show his gratitude. Then he turned his head and said softly to Su Chan, "Chaner, can you not go in with me this time?" She grabbed his arm and shook her head hard. "Yundong, do you know that you are the only one in the world who still calls me Chaner? If you don't take me with you, I won't be able to hear anyone call me Chaner even if I want to." Li Yundong, she was so angry that she didn't even dare to think about it. She looked at Li Yundong and said, "Yundong, do you know that you are the only one in the world who still calls me Chaner? If you don't take me with you, I won't be able to hear anyone call me Choner. Li Yundong laughed and said, "Silly girl, you make it sound like I won't come back. You really have a crow's mouth. Can't you say something nice?" Su Chan had always been obedient to Li Yundong, but this time, she shook her head stubbornly, which was rare. There were tears in the corners of her eyes. She hugged Li Yundong's waist tightly and said foolishly, "I always feel that you are getting stronger and stronger, and you are getting further and further away from me. The last time we fought with the mystical silver fox, if it weren't for the coincidence, I'm afraid we would all have died in a foreign country. Although you have obtained the Wisdom King's Foshen this time, I am always very uneasy in my heart. I always feel that something bad is going to happen." The little girl raised her head and looked at Li Yundong eagerly. She whispered, "Yundong, can you forgive me for what I did? Let me go with you, okay? If you win, let me share the joy of your victory. If you lose, I will die with you, okay?" Li Yundong covered the little girl's mouth with his hand and pretended to be angry at her. "What nonsense are you talking about? We will all be fine. Nothing will happen to us." Li Yundong knew that Ao Wushuang's departure was a huge blow to Su Chan. Although when she accompanied him to Mount Koya, she looked no different from usual at first glance, it was a forced smile. The little girl who used to smile often and show her beautiful and neat snow-white teeth seemed to have disappeared. The strong uneasiness and great fear made her feel extremely insecure. She wanted to stay by his side every second. If she couldn't see him for a while, she was afraid that she would be restless and even lose her mind. She was afraid that she would be so restless that her soul would leave her body. The little girl pulled away Li Yundong's hand from her mouth and begged softly, "Yundong, I know I have always been a trouble to you, but this time I will definitely not cause you any trouble, okay? Don't leave me alone, okay?" Li Yundong looked at the little girl looking at him with tears in her eyes. Her voice was gentle and her expression was sad. His heart softened. He sighed softly and reached out his hand to touch the little girl's cheek. He said softly, "When did you cause me trouble? Silly girl, those things seem troublesome at the time, but when we go through these ups and downs and look back, those are our best memories, aren't they? I understand what you mean. I won't leave you, but you have to promise me that you will never leave me, understand?" As he said this, Li Yundong looked at Su Chan with incomparable gentleness and said softly, "I know you can't live without me, so you are very concerned about my safety. But I also want you to know that I can't live without you. Please take good care of yourself, okay?" The little girl looked at Li Yundong and felt warm in her heart. The grief brought about by the loss of her master seemed to be dispelled at this moment. A smile appeared on her face, but tears kept falling from her eyes. Su Chan wiped away her tears and nodded hard with a smile. "Well, I will take good care of myself. I won't let you worry about me." Li Yundong and the little girl smiled slightly. They looked at each other and felt extremely warm in their hearts, as if they had drunk a cup of warm honey. Although Zi Yuan, who was sitting quietly in the room, did not deliberately listen to the conversation between Li Yundong and Su Chan, her cultivation was already extremely high. Li Yundong and Su Chan did not deliberately lower their voices, so she could hear what they were saying clearly. He can't live without her, and she can't live without him. What about me? Such a thought couldn't help but come to Zi Yuan's mind. For a moment, she was lost in thought and unconsciously became a little silly. When Zhou Qin called her, Zi Yuan suddenly woke up. "What's wrong?" Zi Yuan said with a somewhat unnatural expression. Zhou Qin gave Zi Yuan a meaningful look and said, "Master is asking us to go out. We are going to enter the purple gold luo pan." Zi Yuan calmed down and soon recovered her calm and composed appearance. She nodded gently and said, "Let's go." As she spoke, they filed out of the room. Li Yundong looked at Wan Hongling and Lin Miao, then at Zi Yuan and Zhou Qin, saying, "Hongling, Lin Miao, your cultivation is not high enough, so don't go in with us. Wait outside. In addition, my powerful magical weapon will stay here to protect you. Go and tell the little foxes not to collide with you and these powerful magical weapons." Lin Miao and Wan Hongling nodded. After Li Yundong took out his powerful magical weapon, he felt relieved and nodded to Su Chan, Zi Yuan, and Zhou Qin. With a flip of his hand, he held the purple gold luo pan in the air and let it slowly float and spin in the air. The four of them immediately moved, and the young spirit in their bodies came out of the shell and instantly got into the purple gold luo pan. I will return to Su Chan tomorrow, and then update and resume. I'm deeply sorry for the inconvenience I've caused you these days. Chapter 894. The last time Li Yundong had entered the purple gold Luo jade plate was during the Divine Tribulation. At that time, all the mountains, rivers in the spirit space had been smashed into pieces, but when he came in again, it was already as good as before. When Li Yundong first entered the spirit space, he was on guard against the mystical silver fox's sneak attack, so he was highly vigilant. But after he came in, he found nothing unusual. He was in an extremely wide and vast world. He fixed his eyes on it and saw that in the distance, there was a blue sky that he could not see the end of. Under his feet was a land of rolling mountains. The land was lush with vegetation, as if it was in prehistoric times. There were many birds flying in the jungle, and the birds were chirping, which was fresh and pleasant. This was the first time that Xueqi and Xueqi had come to this spirit space. At first glance, they were shocked by the amazing beauty of the scenery. They saw that the sky was blue without any impurities, like a huge gem, but the mountains and forests under their feet were dazzling, especially the green grassland in the distance. It was flat and green, as if water was about to soak out, making people want to gallop on the grassland. They withdrew their gazes and saw that there was a winding river flowing along the foot of the mountain in the mountains under their feet, like a bright necklace hanging on the neck of a girl. A gust of wind blew, and the water was sparkling, dazzling and dazzling. For a moment, everyone almost forgot the threat of the mystical silver fox, and they were a little shocked and lost in front of the magnificence of nature. After a while, Xueqi sighed softly and said, I didn't expect that there would be such a magical scenery in this powerful magical weapon. It's really incredible. Xueqi's eyes were wide open, and her face showed a strong yearning. She thought to herself, if one day I can spend the rest of my life with Yundong in such a paradise, I won't be ashamed to walk in this world. The little girl's mind flashed with thoughts. She pulled Li Yundong's arm and said softly, Yundong, did you hide in here when you avoided the Divine Tribulation last time? Li Yundong nodded slightly. Xueqi and Xueqi were fascinated by this amazing scenery, and he didn't dare to be careless at all. He released his aura and was alert to the surroundings. He said in a low voice, Yes, but last time this purple gold jade plate was destroyed by the Divine Tribulation. Xueqi asked curiously, Did the spirit space also collapse? What does it look like? Li Yundong smiled and said, You have to ask Zi Yuan. At that time, I had already been struck by heavenly thunder. Only she knows what it was like. Xueqi turned her head to look at Zi Yuan. Zi Yuan smiled at her and said softly, I'll tell you when we get back, but I don't think you want to know. That scene was too terrible. I don't want to see it again. Xueqi secretly stuck out her tongue and didn't ask any more questions. She also looked around vigilantly and nervously. But after looking for a while, she found that the spirit space was extremely large and far away. It was frighteningly quiet all around. Except for the sound of the wind, birds, and the sound of the waterfall in the forest, there was no other sound. It didn't seem like there was any danger at all. The little girl asked softly, Yundong, if the mystical silver fox hides, where will she hide? This lesser kiliacosm is so big. How are we going to find it? This question could be considered to have hit the nail on the head. Li Yundong was a little worried about this matter in his heart. He had expected that the mystical silver fox might attack him when he had just entered the spirit space. Therefore, as soon as Li Yundong came in, he was highly vigilant and kept the most powerful spiritual energy and zhenqi. But after coming in, he found that nothing had happened, which made him feel as if he had punched the air, which was very uncomfortable. He didn't expect that if the mystical silver fox didn't come to hit him, what should he do? In Li Yundong's impression, how could an arrogant and domineering person like the mystical silver fox not take the initiative to attack? But if she was hiding in this spirit space, it would be very troublesome to find her. When he had been addicted to the burning thumb pot, he had stayed for tens of thousands of years. One burning thumb pot had 3,000 worlds and 80,000 mortal worlds. It seemed that the purple gold jade plate was not much better. If it was like the burning thumb pot, they would search inch by inch. Even if they all became old men and old women, they might not be able to find it. Seeing that Li Yundong was thinking with his head down, Xueqi knew that he was in a dilemma. She smiled bitterly and said, This spirit space is so big. Even if we use the young spirit to find it, it will take a long time, right? As she said this, she turned to Ziyuan and said, Ziyuan, how big is the spirit space in this purple gold jade plate? Ziyuan also said helplessly, do you know the Buddhist saying of Mount Sumeru in a mustard seed? Mustard seed was the collective name of mustard and chestnut. Buddhists used mustard seed to describe extremely small things, while Sumeru referred to Mount Sumeru, the largest of the 3,000 worlds of Buddhism. There was no mountain in the world that was bigger and taller than this. However, the Buddhists believed that Mount Sumeru could be accommodated in a mustard seed, which coincided with the idea of Taoist cultivators. Taoist cultivators believed that the human body furnace was a small universe, and the world of heaven and earth was a big universe. This small universe could not only be integrated with the big universe, but it could also contain the big universe with the small universe. This was the idea of the unity of heaven and man. Ziyuan's words were to tell Xueqi that the purple gold jade plate was as big as the universe. Xueqi was shocked when she heard this. She knew that no matter how powerful a cultivator was, even if the young spirit went out of his body to find a life in the universe, it would be like looking for a needle in the sea. It was completely unreliable. She said, what should we do? Why don't we split up and look for it? Li Yundong immediately shook his head and said, it's useless to shake your head. I have a way. Su Chan, Ziyuan, and Xueqi asked at the same time, what is it? Li Yundong looked at Ziyuan with a smile and said, have you forgotten the 8 great freedoms that I comprehended in the 3,000 small worlds of the burning thumb pot? Ziyuan suddenly understood. Ah, you want to use your avatar to look for it? Li Yundong nodded with a smile. The 8 great freedoms of Buddhism believed that the avatars of cultivators could be big or small, far or near, few or many. They could change infinitely and turn stone into gold. At this time, Li Yundong had cultivated to the highest level. Although the world was big, his young spirit avatar could transform into countless incarnations. He was everywhere in the world. Li Yundong said, that's right, but we have to find a place first. Don't stand in the air all the time. It's very disadvantageous for the enemy to be in the dark while I'm in the light. When I clone later, you must protect me. If the mystical silver fox attacks at this time, you only need to hold her back for a few seconds, and my clone can quickly return. Su Chan, Ziyuan, and Xueqi nodded one after another. They followed Li Yundong, restrained their auras, lowered their heads, and flew toward the dense forest on the ground. The forest in the spirit space was not only dense, but also full of spiritual qi. In addition, Li Yundong and the others carefully hid their auras. Once they got into the mountain range, even the immortal sky eyes couldn't find them. Li Yundong, Su Chan, Ziyuan, and Xueqi found an extremely secluded cave. After nodding to Su Chan and the others, he sat down cross-legged. With a thought, the young spirit immediately came out of its shell. At first, there was only one young spirit avatar, but as soon as it flew out of the cave, it split into 2 and flew to the left and right sides. The 2 young spirits on the left and right sides split into 4 and flew to the east, south, west, and north. Then, the 4 young spirits split into 8 avatars and flew in 8 directions. In just a short while, countless avatars appeared in the world and flew in all directions of the spirit space. The universe of heaven and earth could be said to be infinite, but human young spirit could also be infinite. Li Yundong's young spirit continued to search the spirit space. Su Chan, Ziyuan, and Xueqi looked around nervously, for fear that the mystical silver fox would suddenly appear at this time and give them a thunderous blow. In the last battle, this incomparably powerful mystical silver fox had left a very deep impression on them. However, they were nervous for a long time until Li Yundong, who was beside them, suddenly woke up from his meditation and opened his eyes, but there was still no trace of the mystical silver fox. Su Chan was the most impatient. As soon as she saw Li Yundong wake up, she immediately asked in a low voice, how is it? Have you found it? Li Yundong shook his head with a puzzled face. No, my young spirit doppelgangers have turned into hundreds of millions of people. They have almost searched all over the spirit space, but they still can't find any trace of the mystical silver fox. It's really strange. Where can she hide? After hearing this, Xueqi turned her head and looked at Ziyuan in confusion. Is it possible that she escaped from this powerful magical weapon by herself? Ziyuan shook her head and said, that's impossible. Li Yundong carries this powerful magical weapon with him every day. If the mystical silver fox escapes from it, he can't not feel it. Moreover, if this powerful magical weapon wants to come out, either the owner of the powerful magical weapon will bring this person out, or the young spirit avatar will be smashed in this spirit space. Hearing this, Xueqi and Xueqi looked at each other and asked in unison, "Where is the mystical silver fox?" Li Yundong was also puzzled. They had all watched the mystical silver fox escape into the purple gold luo jade plate, but they didn't know where she had gone in the end. This was really strange. Li Yundong thought for a moment and was a little unwilling to give up. He said, "This time, I'll go to the 9th heaven and the 9th earth in this spirit space to look for it. You can help me keep an eye on it." After that, he turned into hundreds of millions of avatars again and went up to the sky and down to the ground. But after a long time, when Li Yundong's countless avatars flew back from all directions, he still found nothing. At this time, Li Yundong was shocked and confused. He couldn't understand where the mystical silver fox had hidden. Was she still in this spirit space? If she was here, why couldn't he find her? If she wasn't here, when did she escape? How did she escape? Where was she now? Thinking of this, Li Yundong felt a headache. There was one more thing at night. Chapter 895. Li Yundong, Xueqi, Ziyuan, and Xueqi looked at each other in dismay. Although one of them was the famous reincarnated wisdom king in the cultivation world of China, and the other three were the famous heaven, human, and fox immortals, they could only stare helplessly in such a situation. Li Yundong felt that what was happening in front of him was really absurd. He looked at Ziyuan helplessly and subconsciously wanted to ask her for help, but at this time, Ziyuan also looked at him helplessly and shook her head. "Don't look at me. I don't know what's going on." Li Yundong looked at Xueqi again and said, "Is there any way to hide in the Fox Zen school and not let the opponent find us at all?" Xueqi thought for a moment and said, "There is. However, with your current realm, it's impossible for you to find a person. I think even the mystical silver fox can't hide completely and not be found by you." Li Yundong pondered for a while and asked, "Is it possible that we are all under an illusion, or is this small world full of magic and illusion?" At this time, Ziyuan immediately shook her head and said, "That's absolutely impossible. No, it should be said that anyone can use magic and illusion, but only the mystical silver fox, or the other fox spirits of the Fox Zen school, can't use this kind of magic in the small world of this powerful magical weapon." Xueqi, who was standing to one side, asked curiously, "Why is that?" Ziyuan said, "This purple gold Luo Yupan is the personal magic weapon of great Zhenren Luo Gongyuan of the Tang dynasty. It is a Taoist treasure." Xueqi blinked her eyes and said, "Luo Gongyuan? I know that he is on the same level as Zhang Guolao, one of the 8 immortals of the Tang dynasty, and great Zhenren Yi fashion. The Taoist assembly was held by them together. However, what does this have to do with us fox spirits being unable to use magic and illusion in the small world of this powerful magical weapon?" Ziyuan said, "Luo Gongyuan once fought with someone in front of Emperor Xuanzong of Tang. The two sides agreed to fix a rui in mid-air, and whoever could make the rui fall would win. In the beginning, Luo Gongyuan exerted all his strength but was unable to make this Yui fall. Later, he used the pretext of performing a ritual and left his body in the main hall, while his young spirit used the goddess Nenya seal to quietly leave. He went to the far north in search of Zijin and specially refined this magical weapon. After Luo Gongyuan refined this magic treasure for 3 days and 3 nights, his young spirit threw this magic treasure into the air. Immediately, the Rui scepter fell, and the opponent had to admit defeat. Afterward, Tang Xuanzong curiously asked Luo Gongyuan how he did it. Zhang Guolao and Vajra Sanzang couldn't do it before. Luo Gongyuan said that the opponent used the power of the fox spirit to fix the Rui scepter, so he refined the purple gold Luo disc, which was specially aimed at the power of the fox spirit, to seal and restrain the opponent's demon aura. Therefore, when the U disc rose into the air, the fox spirit was afraid and fled. Ziyuan said with confidence, "The purple gold Luo disc hardly has any actual combat power. It was originally a sealing prop used by Luo Gongyuan to restrain the power of the fox spirit. But as time went on, this powerful magical weapon was gradually developed into an auxiliary prop by Taoist cultivators, so that cultivators could concentrate on cultivation in the small world, so as to obtain more time and strength. However, its real function has slowly been forgotten by the world. Therefore, any cultivator who comes to this small kiliacosm can use magic and illusion, but only the mystical silver fox can't, because she is a fox demon. The mystical silver fox can use her Buddhist magic and fox demon body unimpeded in this small kiliacosm, because her cultivation has reached the saint level, far beyond the scope of a fox demon. Her Dharma power and Xueqi do not reveal demonic qi, but reveal a powerful and vast Buddhist and Taoist qi. But if she wants to use the magic and illusion of the fox Zen school, she must use the demon aura of the fox spirit itself, and this demon aura is naturally restrained by this powerful magical weapon. Therefore, it is impossible for the mystical silver fox to release any magic and illusion in this powerful magical weapon. Li Jiandong, Su Chan, and Zhou Qin suddenly understood. Li Jiandong thought for a moment and asked Zi Yuan, "In your opinion, where should the mystical silver fox go now? Will she still be in this small world?" Zi Yuan hesitated for a while, gritted her teeth, and said, "In fact, there is a way to find out if the mystical silver fox is in this small world." Hearing her words, Li Jiandong immediately understood. He shook his head like a drum and said, No, I know what you mean. You want to destroy this powerful magical weapon. Once this powerful magical weapon is destroyed, the small world inside will also collapse and be destroyed. In this case, the mystical silver fox will naturally have no place to hide. She will either be destroyed with the small world or escape by herself. But what about Chao Kefi's soul and divine sense? Moreover, this is the powerful magical weapon of your Linggong sect. How can you tell your master's spirit in heaven if it is destroyed? No, this method absolutely won't work. Seeing that Li Jiandong had denied it so straightforwardly, Zi Yuan sighed softly and said, "Then there's nothing I can do." Li Jiandong frowned and hesitated. Zhou Qin, who was beside him, advised, "Master, why don't we just go out first and then think of a way? I think there must be some mysterious change that we don't know. Otherwise, it wouldn't be like this." Li Jiandong thought for a moment and nodded in agreement. Soon, the young spirits of the four of them moved and came out of the Zijin Luo Pan. They returned to their own bodies. They had stayed in the small world for a long time, but it was only the blink of an eye outside. Ruan Hongling and Lin Miao saw that they had just gone in, and then they quickly came out. Ruan Hongling said in surprise, "You came out just like that? How is it? Where is the mystical silver fox? Is she dead?" Li Jiandong and the others looked at each other and smiled bitterly. Zi Yuan sighed and said, "If she died so easily, she wouldn't be the mystical silver fox." Ruan Hongling was slightly surprised. "What happened?" Zhou Qin sighed and said, "The mystical silver fox has flown away. It's gone." Ruan Hongling's eyes widened. "What? Gone? A perfectly fine person, no, such a powerful fox demon. Why would he disappear for no reason?" Zhou Qin shook her head and said, "You just said that she was so powerful, so she disappeared into thin air." Lin Miao, on the other hand, had no idea what was going on. He was watching from the side. Li Jiandong had specially gone to Mount Koya to get the Faz Hen of the reincarnated Wisdom King. He was ready to enter the Zijin Luo Pan and completely kill the mystical silver fox. However, he didn't expect that he would get nothing, and he had no clue at all. This feeling made him very uneasy, as if there was a pair of eyes staring at him from behind. The enemy was in the dark and he was in the light, which made him feel like he was sitting on pins and needles. However, Li Jiandong's cultivation was already very profound, and he was also very shrewd. Although he was anxious in his heart, his face was still as calm as water. No one could see that he was worried at all. He turned to Su Chan, Zi Yuan, and the others and said, "I'll think about what's going on alone. You can go and do your own things." The little girl and Zi Yuan also knew that he was worried, and the pressure on his shoulders must be very great. They were very considerate and didn't disturb him anymore. Instead, they watched him go out of the room. Of course, the few of them couldn't be busy, so they gathered their heads together and guessed the whereabouts of the mystical silver fox one by one. Li Jiandong walked out of the room with a heavy heart. He was still carrying the Zijin Luo Pan with him. He held the powerful magical weapon in one hand and gently stroked it with the other. He was quickly guessing what had gone wrong. Why did the mystical silver fox disappear? He walked out of Zi Yuan's residence alone, took out the key and entered his own residence. As soon as he opened the door, he saw the little foxes gathered together to watch TV. He didn't know if it was because Su Chan had set a very bad example. The little girl didn't like cultivation very much and liked to play. After these little foxes went down the mountain, they were also infected with these stupid diseases. In addition to the fixed course of cultivation, they stayed in front of the TV all day long and watched TV. These little girls couldn't play well with computers. That thing was a little complicated for them. But TV was much simpler. They could always press up, down, left and right? They could press whatever they wanted to see. If they really couldn't, they could scan back and forth with the up and down keys. Although the departure of Ao Wushuang, Xueqi, and Lu Yuehong had been a huge blow to them, this did not hinder the little foxes' love for TV shows. Before they had watched TV happily, but now they were just listless. In the past, they used to watch TV in groups of 2s and 3s, but now they were lying down or lying on their stomachs watching TV. Their mood was different, so their posture was different. Looking at their expressions, Li Yundong couldn't help but burst into laughter. He shook his head secretly and admired their optimistic spirit of crying and letting it be over. When the little foxes saw Li Yundong enter the room, they all tried to get up and greet him. Li Yundong smiled and waved his hand at them, indicating that they should do what they were doing and leave him alone. The little foxes didn't stand on ceremony. They stood up symbolically and called him leader sweetly. Then they turned their eyes to the TV again. At this time, Ling Yu, who was holding the remote control in her hand, scanned the TV stations, but she still couldn't find anything she wanted to watch. She was about to transfer the remote control to someone else when she suddenly heard a news broadcast from the TV station. At 1:35 p.m. yesterday, an earthquake occurred near Yingtan in Jiangxi province. The epicenter of the earthquake was the famous tourist attraction Mount Longhu. A local tourist peak collapsed and the mountain was damaged, but there were no casualties. The little fox Ling Yu asked curiously, "Leader, didn't this happen 2 days ago? Why did it only report today?" Li Yundong was about to enter the door when he turned around and said with a smile, "This kind of thing will only be reported when it can't be hidden anymore. What's so strange about hiding it for a day or two? No one died." As soon as he finished speaking, a little fox next to him suddenly said in a sobbing tone, "Nonsense, little Xueqi Wushuang is dead." But soon another little fox retorted, "Who said that? Little Xueqi Wushuang just sealed herself. She's not dead." But this immediately caused a heated debate. The little foxes said at once, "If this is not death, then what is death? Must her body and soul be destroyed?" Little Xueqi Wushuang said she would wait for Wang Yuanshan to come back, but can she wait? "Baba, you jinx. Can't you say something nice? Now Chao Yi Sherbua is gone, and Lu Yuehong Sherbua doesn't want us anymore. Can't we keep some memories?" Li Yundong listened to their bickering and shook his head secretly. He pushed open the door of his room and walked in. After entering the room, he sat down cross-legged on the bed and placed the purple gold luo pan in front of him. Looking at the purple gold magic treasure floating in the air slowly rotating, he frowned and thought to himself. Just as he was thinking about it, he heard a soft knock on the door. Li Yundong said without hesitation, "Come in." With a squeak, the door was pushed open. It was the golden-haired Lin Miao who walked in timidly. Li Yundong saw her at a glance and asked curiously, "It's you? What can I do for you?" Lin Miao nodded, looking a little hesitant. She took a deep breath, gathered up her courage and said, "Master, I think I know where the mystical silver fox might be." Li Yundong was so shocked that he jumped up from the bed. "What? I don't even know. Zi Yuan has been cultivating for more than 10 years. Even such a knowledgeable person doesn't know. How can you, a foreign devil who hasn't even entered the cultivation sect, know? What's the reason? Finally, I'm back in Suzhou again. Alas, my father-in-law is an old intellectual. Every day, he rests at sunset and works at sunrise. At 7:30, he watches the news and the weather forecast and goes to bed on time. The next day, he gets up at 4:30, washes at home, and goes out to the park at 5 o'clock. He repeats day and night and never changes. My father-in-law is small. His house is only about 40 square meters. He can hear everything clearly. Poor me, I fall asleep at 1 or 2 o'clock every day and wake up at 4 or 5 o'clock. I really don't know how I've been through these days. The last time I went back to Shanghai to take care of my father-in-law, it was a hot summer. There was no air conditioner in the old Mount Tai's house, and the electric fan was not turned on, so I took my wife to live in a hotel. I didn't suffer much. This time, the weather is cool, but I have no excuse to live out. There are gains and losses. Chapter 896. Li Yundong looked at Lin Miao in shock. He couldn't believe his ears. Do you know the whereabouts of the mystical silver fox? Being stared at by Li Yundong, Lin Miao hurriedly waved her hand and said, No, I should say a little bit. Li Yundong didn't stand on ceremony with her. He quickly came to her side and asked, Where is the mystical silver fox? Lin Miao took a deep breath and said, In fact, I don't know the specific whereabouts. Master, you are so powerful, but you don't know her whereabouts. How could I know? But I think you seem to have gotten into a dead end. Li Yundong asked curiously, A dead end? Lin Miao nodded and said, Yes, master. You should know that when the police handle a case, in order to find out the truth, they often reorganize the case. Reorganize the case? Li Yundong was stunned and slightly sank. He couldn't help but nod and say, Do you mean that if I replay the situation at that time, I can probably guess what happened? Lin Miao nodded slightly and smiled embarrassedly. That's all I can think of. I don't know if I can help you. Li Yundong smiled and nodded at her. What you said makes sense. We might as well give it a try according to what you said. Seeing that Li Yundong had agreed, Lin Miao was overjoyed. I hope it works. Li Yundong smiled and took her out of the room to Zi Yuan's residence. When Zi Yuan heard the sound of the door, she looked back and saw that Li Yundong had returned. When she saw Li Yundong's expression, she smiled and said, Have you thought of the reason? Li Yundong smiled and pointed to Lin Miao, who was beside him, and said, Her words woke me up. As he spoke, he stretched out 4 fingers and said, For words, reorganize the case. In this room, whether it was Su Chan, Zi Yuan or Zhou Qin, they were all extremely smart women. They immediately understood it. They suddenly exclaimed and said, Yes, why didn't we think of it? The little girl blinked her eyes and asked, Do we still have to go to Mount Koya? Li Yundong smiled and said, There's no need to go. After being pointed out by Lin Miao, I think the disappearance of the mystical silver fox should be mainly focused on the 2 powerful magical weapons, the purple gold luo disc and the azure glass mirror. I think maybe if we reenact the scene at that time, we should know the reason. I'll be there soon. Zi Yuan thought for a moment, then nodded slightly and said, This is also the best way now. Li Yundong nodded and suddenly said with some embarrassment, It's not difficult to reproduce the scene, but I don't know who will act as the mystical silver fox. As soon as he finished speaking, someone beside him tugged at his arm. It was Su Chan, who was looking at him expectantly. She tapped her nose with her snow-white finger and said, Me? Of course it's me. Li Yundong looked at Su Chan worriedly. Aren't you afraid that something might happen? It's not fun to have your soul searched by the sky-piercing glass mirror. What if something goes wrong? The little girl shook her head stubbornly and grabbed his arm tightly with both hands. I'm not afraid. You're here, aren't you? Li Yundong looked at the little girl lovingly and said with a smile. Okay, I'll go with you, okay? As he said this, he looked at Zi Yuan and said, Zi Yuan, I'll have to trouble you. She hesitated for a moment and said, But no one knows what the consequences will be. If anything goes wrong, Li Yundong knew that she was calm and worried. To put it nicely, she was thorough in her actions. To put it bluntly, she was overcautious in her actions. He smiled and said, There is no perfect thing in the world. If you want to find out the whereabouts of the mystical silver fox, this is the only way now. However, I don't think there should be any risk. Moreover, the purple gold luo pan and the sky-piercing glass mirror are both your powerful magical weapons. It's the best thing for you to control them. Zhou Qin, who was standing to one side, thought for a moment and also advised, Yes, Zi Yuan, I'm not familiar with these 2 powerful magical weapons. Besides, there's no other way now. Let's stall for 1 more second. Zi Yuan was a little worried, but when she saw that Li Yundong, Su Chan, and Zhou Qin were all insistent, she couldn't say anything more. She sighed softly and said, Well, since you all say so, let's give it a try. As she said this, she said to Li Yundong very cautiously, If you feel anything wrong, you must tell me immediately, and I will immediately stop the spell. Li Yundong had obtained the Wisdom King's Fa's Hen, and his strength and momentum were at their peak. He smiled and said, Don't worry, this little difficulty won't be a problem for me. Although his words were flat, A sense of disdain for anyone in the world arose spontaneously. Seeing that Li Yundong was full of confidence, Zi Yuan also smiled slightly. She gently touched the hair next to her forehead and said, "Well, I'll give it a try." Li Yundong smiled and took both the purple gold luo pan and the sky-piercing glass mirror into his hands. He erased all the spiritual energy and zhenqi that belonged to him, and then put them in her hands. At this time, Zi Yuan was already a great master in the Thunder Retribution realm. Although these powerful magical weapons were ownerless, when she poured her spiritual energy and zhenqi into them, it was only a matter of an instant. Soon, these two powerful magical weapons were filled with her zhenqi and spiritual energy, and once again became her own powerful magical weapons. Zi Yuan looked around and said, "I'm afraid this room is too small. I think we'd better find a more secluded and spacious place." When using the purple gold luo pan to cast spells, the caster must not be disturbed in any way, so the spaciousness of the place was secondary. Safety and concealment were more important. Li Yundong nodded and said, "After thinking about it, the Taoist field of the Fox Zen School in Mount Tianlong is the most suitable. Moreover, the stone cave is quite secluded, so we don't have to worry about being disturbed by others." Everyone nodded in agreement, and they once again flew to Dongwu City. By the time they arrived at Mount Tianlong, it was already evening. When they entered the stone cave, it was even darker around them. They couldn't even see their fingers in front of them. After Su Chan, Zi Yuan, and the others used magic to light up flames around them, the stone cave was brightly lit. Zi Yuan had also been to this stone cave before. She saw that the stone cave was 5 or 6 meters high and 30 or 40 meters in diameter, which was suitable for such a magic casting experiment. Zi Yuan left the purple gold luo pan in the middle of the stone cave. She held the sky-reaching glass mirror and said to Li Yundong and Su Chan, "Are you two ready?" Li Yundong and Su Chan looked at each other and smiled. They interlocked their fingers and said with a smile, "Yes." Li Yundong said with a smile, "It's not like we're going to be separated forever. Why are you so serious?" Xueqi, who was standing to one side, also wanted to try with Li Yundong, but she saw that Li Yundong and Su Chan were holding hands so tightly that there was no gap between them. As soon as she opened her mouth, she immediately closed it again. She sighed softly in her heart and didn't say the words that were on the tip of her tongue. At this time, Zi Yuan was shouldering a heavy responsibility, so she was not in the mood to pay attention to her little daughter's affairs. She had a vague feeling that something was wrong, but she couldn't tell what was wrong. She could only take one step at a time. When she came to the air, she urged her zhenqi to mobilize the sky-reaching glass mirror, and a straight colorful light hit Li Yundong and Su Chan suddenly. The figures of Li Yundong and Su Chan became a little distorted and blurred. Then on the surface of the sky-reaching glass mirror, two figures slowly appeared. At first, it was a skeleton, but it slowly became bloody and rosy, and gradually turned into the human figures of Li Yundong and Su Chan. When Zi Yuan was fighting with the mystical silver fox, she didn't see the figures in the spirit mirror with her own eyes. At this time, she saw that the two of them looked exactly the same as real people, but she saw them gradually become bloody and plump from the terrifying and ferocious skeletons. The change was really a little creepy. Moreover, she also knew that when she extracted the souls of Li Yundong and Su Chan, if she didn't put their souls into the purple gold luo pan in time, if they were really pulled into the mirror body, it would lead to a great tragedy. Such a serious consequence. Even though Zi Yuan was a calm person, she couldn't help but have cold sweat on her forehead at this time. Zi Yuan nervously mobilized her zhenqi and separated the souls of Li Yundong and Su Chan from their respective human cauldrons. When their souls flew out, it seemed to others that it was extremely slow, but Zi Yuan felt as if the souls of these two people would be locked in the celestial glaze mirror by her carelessness in the next second. She didn't dare to stay any longer. Soon, the mirror turned over, and the colorful divine light shone on the purple gold luo pan. Suddenly, the souls of Li Yundong and Su Chan were thrown straight into the purple gold luo pan. Xueqi and Lin Miao, who were next to them, both widened their eyes and looked over. They saw that as soon as the souls of Li Yundong and Su Chan came into contact with the purple gold luo pan, their figures immediately disappeared, just like the previous mystical silver fox. Xueqi immediately said to Zi Yuan, "Zi Yuan, stop. Hurry up and go into the purple gold luo pan to take a look." Zi Yuan immediately put away the sky-reaching glass mirror. With a move of her body, her yang spirit went into the purple gold luo pan, and Zhou Qin's yang spirit also went in with her. Only Lin Miao was left to stare at them, feeling anxious. While Lin Miao was gritting his teeth anxiously, he saw Zi Yuan and Zhou Qin quickly come out again. Their pretty faces were pale, and after they came out, they looked indescribably panicked. Lin Miao's heart skipped a beat, and he immediately asked, "What's wrong?" Zi Yuan's face was extremely ugly. She frowned tightly, as if she was thinking about something quickly. Her body was trembling slightly, and it was unknown whether she was afraid or worried. Zhou Qin said in a slightly trembling voice, "I can't find Master and Su Chan anywhere in the purple gold luo pange." As she said this, she looked at Zi Yuan in fear. "Zi Yuan, what should we do? Where on earth have they gone?" After hearing this, Lin Miao's eyes widened and he thought to himself, "Oh my god, no way? The two of them disappeared just like that? Is this a big change? I just got home. I'll write a chapter before eating. After eating, I'll continue with the second chapter. I'll eat first." Chapter 897. The wonderful thing about changing a living person was that it could make a living person disappear under one's nose, and then instantly change back. It was wonderful to make a living person disappear, but it would be a little bad if it couldn't be changed back after it disappeared. Soon, Zi Yuan and Zhou Qin were so shocked that they broke out in a cold sweat. The two women, who usually remained calm in the face of Mount Tai collapsing in front of them, were completely at a loss at this time. They quickly rushed over to Li Yundong and Su Chan, feeling their pulses and pressing their acupoints. But when they probed, they found that the soul's divine senses and yang spirit Jinshin in Li Yundong and Su Chan's bodies had all been stolen. There were only 2 empty bodies left. This scared the two of them a lot. They looked at each other, their faces as pale as paper, and their eyes were hollow. Zhou Qin asked Zi Yuan in a panic, but how could Zi Yuan know the answer? She only felt that her mind was buzzing, as if an atomic bomb had exploded. The explosion made her dizzy, and the qi and blood in her body were in a mess. At this time, even if a little child were to stab her with a knife, she would probably fall down on her back. Zhou Qin saw that Zi Yuan was a little strange. She quickly reached out her hand and pressed on the Ling Tai acupoint on Zi Yuan's back. Only then did the qi in Zi Yuan's body become smooth, and she came to her senses. Zi Yuan's beautiful face turned pale, and she said in a trembling voice, "It's all my fault. I knew something would happen. Something really happened. It's all my fault." Zhou Qin saw that Zi Yuan was already in a panic and felt extremely guilty. Although she was even more flustered than Zi Yuan, she knew that she couldn't panic. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. One of them had to calm down. Zhou Qin quickly persuaded, "Zi Yuan, how can you be blamed for this? Who would know what was going on? Maybe there was an accident? Or maybe Master was just joking with us." Zhou Qin didn't believe her own words. If Li Yundong had just reached the Zhuji phase, he might have made a joke with them. But now, Li Yundong's cultivation was getting higher and higher, and he was already the strongest person in the world. Not only did he have the strength of the strongest person in the world, but he also had the bearing and style of the strongest person in the world. How could such a person make such a joke with them at this critical moment? Therefore, there was only one possibility. You almost there, and this kind of accident really made it hard for people to think in a good way. At the end of her words, Zhou Qin lowered her voice and looked gloomy. Persuading others made her even more depressed. This was really too depressing. Lin Miao, on the other hand, did not have a high cultivation base like them and did not understand the severity of the situation. She mustered up her courage and asked, "Perhaps Master and the rest have already returned?" These words made both Zi Yuan and Zhou Qin jump up and rush out of the stone cave like a gust of wind. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared, leaving Lin Miao standing alone in the huge stone cave. Lin Miao was dumbfounded as he looked at the direction where the two of them left. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Hey, don't leave me behind. How can I go back alone?" At this moment, she had never felt so helpless and distressed. Even when she had traveled thousands of miles to China to seek Tao, she had never felt discouraged. But now, Lin Miao realized how insignificant and helpless everything he had been proud of was in this world of cultivation. Not only could she not help her master, but she had also become a huge burden. It was even a problem for her to go back alone. It was the middle of the night in the wilderness. How could she go down the mountain and take a car? Lin Miao was in a daze when she saw Xueqi rush back like a gust of wind. She grabbed her like a sack and rushed out. Her strength was so great that her whole body almost flew up. Fortunately, Lin Miao's body had been transformed by the Dun Jindan, so it was far stronger than ordinary people. Otherwise, Xueqi's pull would have dislocated her arm. Xueqi pulled her and said quickly without looking back, "Let's go. You will be there soon." Although Xueqi and Zi Yuan knew that it was impossible for Li Jiandong to leave them here for no reason and suddenly appear at home, at this time, they were really terrified and helpless. They grabbed hold of a life-saving straw and refused to let go. No matter how ridiculous the speculation was, they were willing to believe it. When the three of them rushed home, Ruan Hongling was cultivating in the living room. She saw a gust of wind blowing in her face, and then three figures appeared in front of her. She took a closer look and couldn't help but say angrily, "Shiji Zi Yuan, what are you doing? You scared me to death. Fortunately, I am in a shallow state of meditation. Otherwise, I would have been frightened by you." Although the two of them were not real sisters, they were as close as brothers and sisters. If she said such jokes on a normal day, Zi Yuan would have to tease and quarrel with her. However, Zi Yuan didn't even look at her. She swept past her like a gust of wind and immediately searched all the rooms in her residence. Zi Yuan knew that it was impossible for Li Jiandong to be at home, but she still broke into every room. Every time she broke into a room, her heart sank a little. After searching her own residence, she gritted her teeth and wanted to break into the residence of Li Jiandong and the little foxes across the street. Xueqi was still a little calm. She hugged her and advised, "Zi Yuan, don't go. Master will definitely not be there." Ling Yu and the others have finally recovered from the departure of Xueqi and Lu Yuehong. If you go now, they will definitely be in a mess. At that time, we will be completely alone. On the side, Ruan Hongling looked at her senior sister dumbfoundedly. She had never seen her senior sister so flustered. Even when she first heard the news of Wang Yuanshan's death, she just hid alone and secretly shed tears for a while. When she came out again, she had already regained her calmness and composure. It was only a few minutes difference between the two. Ruan Hongling couldn't help but ask, "Sister Zi Yuan, what happened? Don't scare me. What's going on?" After all, Zi Yuan was a reasonable woman. When she was stopped by Xueqi, her body finally swayed and she almost fell into Xueqi's arms. She forced herself not to fall and sat down in the sand. One hand tightly grasped the edge of the sand, the other clenched into a fist, trembling slightly. Her eyes were full of tears, and she whispered, "Li Jiandong and Su Chan. They are all gone. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have let them try." Ruan Hongling was shocked and horrified. How could two living people disappear? What's going on? At this time, Xueqi explained the whole matter to Ruan Hongling in a low voice, and then said, "We don't know the situation, let alone the result of this matter. We shouldn't act rashly now. Zi Yuan, don't worry. Let's think about it carefully. What on earth is going on?" As she spoke, she took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and tried to calm herself down. After thinking for a while, she said, "When this Tongtian glass mirror and the Zijin Luo disc are used together, will there be any special effects? Did your master ever tell you about this, Zi Yuan?" Although Zi Yuan was still blaming herself, after all, her cultivation was profound and her willpower was good. She gradually recovered. She calmed down and thought for a long time before saying in a hoarse voice, "No, my master never told me what the result would be if these two powerful magical weapons were used together." Xueqi was a little disappointed. She whispered, "Then what on earth is going on?" Ruan Hongling, who was standing to one side, couldn't help but say, "Could it be that the combination of these two powerful magical weapons destroyed both of their souls?" Zi Yuan immediately raised her head and said in a trembling voice, "Hongling, don't talk nonsense." Xueqi also glared at her fiercely. "Even if you die, my master won't." Ruan Hongling immediately covered her mouth with both hands and said with a wry smile, "I'm just thinking about the worst. I don't want anything to happen to the two of them. Li Yundong is now a rich man. In the future, I still have to count on him to give me money to spend. Not to mention Su Chan, don't you know my relationship with Chaner? I'm just a child. The wind blows." Neither Zi Yuan nor Xueqi was in the mood to pay attention to her. Their eyes kept rolling in their sockets, trying to come up with a solution. Lin Miao also lowered his head, not knowing where to put his hands. Seeing that the two of them were in such a panic, Lin Miao couldn't help but whisper, "I'm sorry, it's all my fault. If I hadn't brought up this idea, it wouldn't have become like this." Guan Hongling widened her eyes and looked at Lin Miao. Did you come up with this bad idea?" Lin Miao's face suddenly turned red, and tears were about to fall. At this time, Zi Yuan raised her head and scolded in a low voice, "Hongling, don't say it if you don't understand." As she said this, her eyes narrowed and she said in a deep voice, "I thought about it carefully. In fact, Lin Miao's method should be right, but we can't figure out the key points and don't understand what happened. In my opinion, when the purple gold luo pan and the glass mirror of heaven were used together, there must have been some unexpected effect. That's why the souls of the mystical silver fox, Li Yundong, and Su Chan suddenly disappeared one after another." Zhou Qin's eyes lit up. "Yes, if we follow this clue, we will definitely be able to find out the reason." Guan Hongling also clapped her hands and said, Yes, Shiji Zi Yuan, think about it. Who is the most knowledgeable person in the cultivation world now? Who can find out the truth of this matter?" Zi Yuan bit her lip hard and said softly, "Zhou Chong is dead, and my master has also passed away. I think the number of famous cultivators of the older generation in the cultivation world can be counted on one hand." Zhou Qin quickly thought of something and said, "Celestial Master Zhang?" Guan Hongling didn't go to Mount Longhu with Li Yundong and the others. She had always been upset about the Zhengyi school bullying their Linggong sect again and again. At this time, when she heard this, she was shocked. Are we going to ask the Zhengyi school for help? Will they help us? Zi Yuan pursed her lips hard, stood up, and said resolutely, "If they don't help, I will kneel through Mount Longhu." However, Zhou Qin didn't have such a deep-rooted sectarian ideology as Zi Yuan. She said with a murderous look, "Humph, you're so polite. If they don't help, humph, I will make a scene in Mount Longhu. If my master is gone, no one in the world will have an easy time." Chapter 898. Zi Yuan and Zhou Qin had made up their minds to go to Mount Longhu. Although Guan Hongling was a disciple of the Zhengyi school, she had been bullied a little harshly in the past. Therefore, when she heard that the two of them were going to Mount Longhu, she immediately said, Okay, let's go." Lin Miao was far inferior to the three of them in terms of seniority, and cultivation. In addition, it had been her idea before, so she didn't dare to say anything to stop them. She just looked at the three of them eagerly and said, "Can you take me with you?" Zi Yuan looked at Lin Miao and frowned. She thought that there might be some conflicts in this trip to the Zhengyi school, and Lin Miao's cultivation was too low. If there was really a conflict, she and Zhou Qin might not be able to protect themselves, let alone take care of Lin Miao. Zi Yuan was about to speak, but Zhou Qin rushed to say, "Zi Yuan, let Lin Miao go. Her identity is special. Maybe it will have a miraculous effect." Zi Yuan's heart skipped a beat. She glanced at the golden-haired Lin Miao and nodded slowly. "Okay, but don't talk too much when you go. Mount Longhu is not like other places. If you cause any trouble, we may not be able to protect you." Lin Miao's heart was in her throat. She finally relaxed and replied very seriously, "Well, I just want to help a little. I also want Master to come back as soon as possible." Speaking of Li Yundong, Zi Yuan and Zhou Qin couldn't help but look at each other sadly. They couldn't help asking themselves countless times in their hearts, where on earth have Li Yundong and Su Chan gone? They were all cultivators, so they didn't stay for long. They rushed to Mount Longhu overnight. By the time they arrived, it was already early in the morning. Lin Miao was flying in the air with Zi Yuan, looking down at the wonderful scenery of green mountains and rivers. She saw that at the foot of the mountain, there was green water flowing slowly along the mountain and around the peaks, as if resting or in love with the scenery. The beach was white, and the pool was green. She was either talking softly or meditating quietly, like a beautiful and refined lady. Next to the green water were 99 peaks and 24 rocks. These peaks were filled with the softest water and the masculinity of the 99 dragons. From a distance, one could see that the ground was like holding a group of dragons and tigers. It was really majestic, like a tiger crouching and a dragon coiling. But looking closely, one could see that there was a refreshing green in the lush forest. It was full of spirituality. Even a rookie cultivator like her felt that her eyes would become much more comfortable with one more look, and her body would feel much more comfortable with one more breath of spiritual qi. This was the first time Lin Miao had come to this beautiful place. She couldn't help but be shocked by this wonderful scenery. She couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice, "What a beautiful place! What a magnificent place! It's really incredible!" She turned her head and said to Zi Yuan, "I've been to many countries, but only China has such a magical and beautiful place. Now I finally understand why only China has Taoist cultivators like you, while other countries don't." Even though Zi Yuan's heart was heavy, she couldn't help but smile slightly. She said proudly, "There are spiritual mountains and beautiful waters everywhere in China. As long as there is a green water Dan Mountain, there will be Buddhist and Taoist cultivation fields. Such a place is full of spiritual qi and collects the essence of heaven and earth. It has the characteristics of 4 distinct seasons, and there is no suffering from the 4 seasons of cold, hot, and cold. I don't think there is such a cultivation place in foreign countries." Xueqi was born in an official family and had gone abroad many times since she was a child. She had been to many tourist attractions all over the world. She had been to most of the natural wonders that were praised by the world. But now that she thought about Zi Yuan's words, she couldn't help but nod and say, "That's right. If we're talking about a place alone, there are actually other places that can be compared to Mount Longhu. However, there are so many spiritual mountains and secluded mansions in China that are concentrated in one country. I think if our country was full of white grass or grasslands, I'm afraid there wouldn't be such a magical Taoist cultivation sect, right?" Lin Miao exclaimed in a low voice, "God loves China. I hope the cultivators of this beautiful place can help us find our master." Xueqi sighed. "I hope so." Zi Yuan nodded and said, "Let's go down. Don't be rude and be laughed at." At this time, they landed together. As soon as they arrived at the ground of Mount Longhu, they met 2 Taoist priests in Taoist robes. Both of them were holding fly whisks and seemed to be chanting scriptures along the mountain, but in fact, they were patrolling. One of them was none other than the beautiful Zhang Lufeng. Zi Yuan stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Amateus, please wait a moment, my fellow Taoists." Zhang Lufeng turned her head and saw 4 beautiful women standing behind her. Except for Lin Miao, who she was unfamiliar with, she knew the other 3. Zhang Lufeng was shocked and immediately returned the greeting. She said cautiously, "It's Zhenren Zi Yuan. I'm so rude. I wonder why Zhenren Zi Yuan is here?" Zhang Lufeng had unintentionally made a big mistake. As a result, Li San had been expelled from the sect and she had also been punished. However, her punishment was that Zhang Tianshi had ordered her to go to Zhang Kongyun's place to receive punishment. However, Zhang Kongyun was in seclusion at the moment, so she hadn't actually been punished. However, Zhang Lufeng felt guilty, so she took the initiative to suggest that she follow her senior brothers and sisters to patrol the mountain. However, she hadn't expected that as soon as she patrolled the mountain, she would meet Zi Yuan's group. Soon, Zi Yuan knew that Zhang Lufeng was from the Zhangyi school and had a good impression of them. She relaxed a little and said, "We have an important matter to ask to see Zhenren Zhang Tianshi." Zhang Lufeng asked curiously, "You want to see the leader? He is in seclusion. I'm afraid that you will have made a wasted trip." Zi Yuan said softly, "We only have a few questions to ask Zhenren. We will leave after we ask. There's no need to trouble him." Zhang Lufeng hesitated for a moment, then turned to the male Taoist beside her and said, "Xixiang, what should we do?" At this time, the Taoist's heart was beating violently, and his mind was almost empty. He didn't dare to raise his head and said in a panic, "Little Shimmy, you make the decision." Zhang Lufeng had a strange look on her face. "It's really strange. As a Xixiang, how can you let my little Shimmy make the decision?" "No, I don't make the decision. Otherwise, if something goes wrong, I will be blamed again. It's not easy for me to have a Xixiang, but he has been kicked out of the sect. If something happens, I will also be kicked out of the sect. What should I do?" Zi Yuan smiled slightly and stopped asking her. She turned to the male Taoist Xixiang and said, "Fellow Taoist, can you help me pass the message?" The power of a beautiful woman was infinite, not to mention a fairy. The male Taoist had seen Zi Yuan at the inauguration ceremony of Mount Longhu before. He had fallen in love with her at first sight. At this time, when he saw her again, He was so nervous that his heart almost jumped out of his throat. In addition, Zhou Qin, Ruan Hongling, and Lin Miao, these three beautiful women were by his side. They were so beautiful that he didn't dare to lift his eyelids. The Shixiang hurriedly replied, "Okay, fellow Taoist Zi Yuan, please come with me." As he spoke, he turned around and walked up the mountain. Zhang Lufang was a little tongue-tied as she watched from the side. She thought to herself, "Hey, are you serious? He wants you to pass a message. Why did you just take it directly? You don't have to be so lustful, do you?" According to etiquette, the Taoist should have reported first and then formally led Zi Yuan and the others up the mountain to visit Celestial Master Zhang after obtaining permission. However, Zi Yuan hadn't expected that the Taoist would directly lead them up. She hesitated for a moment. Zhou Qin, who was beside her, immediately urged, "What are you hesitating for? Follow him. Time waits for no one." Thinking of this, Zi Yuan made up her mind and stepped forward to follow him. Although Zhang Lufang faintly felt that something was wrong, she had shirked all responsibility before. In any case, no matter how much blame was placed on her, she was happy to follow them leisurely. Zhang Lufang had seen Zi Yuan, Zhou Qin, and Ruan Hongling before, so after a few glances at them, she cast her eyes on Lin Miao. Because of Li Sen, she was not like many Chinese cultivators, who had great prejudice against foreign cultivators. Instead, she had a good impression of these golden-haired and blue-eyed cultivators. Zhang Lufang approached Lin Miao. She had once visited Li Yundong and seen Lin Miao standing next to him, so she said with a smile, "Hello, I seem to have seen you before. You are Li Wudi's disciple, aren't you?" Li Yundong had already become the #1 master in the world. His every word and deed had the spirit and bearing of a master of a generation. In daily life, he subtly influenced the people around him. Therefore, Lin Miao felt that she couldn't lose her master's face. In addition, she was from a big family, so her words and actions were quite like a lady from a noble family. She immediately bowed and said in a reserved manner, "My master is Li Yundong." Zhang Lufang saw that she was very fluent in Chinese, which was much better than the big-nosed Li senator. She couldn't help but sigh softly and say, "Ah, your Chinese is really good. It's much better than my silly Xueqi. It's a pity that he has been expelled from the sect. Otherwise, you would definitely have something to say when you saw him. Maybe you are from the same hometown." Lin Miao didn't know about Li Sen's experience. She smiled and said politely, "I wonder what your Shaidi's name is? Where is he from? Maybe we really are from the same hometown." Zhang Lufang said faintly, His name is Li Senator. There is so much wood in his name. If it weren't for the lack of wood in the 5 elements, how could he have such a name?" Lin Miao just said it out of politeness, but she didn't expect to ask something that shocked her. Lin Miao suddenly trembled all over. She couldn't help but stretch out her hands and grab Zhang Lufang. She cried out involuntarily, "What did you say? Li Sen? John? Where is he?" Zhang Lufang looked at Lin Miao, tongue-tied. She hadn't expected that this blonde, blue-eyed, and polite beauty would lose her composure like this. She cried out, "You're hurting me." Although Lin Miao didn't have any spiritual power, she was also a reconstructed body of panacea, so she was very strong. She had lost her composure and squeezed hard, almost turning Zhang Liufang's 2 delicate arms purple. Lin Miao immediately let go of her hand and said apologetically, "I'm sorry, I was too excited. Is your Shurdi called Li Sen? Is he tall? Has curly golden hair? Does he look like a burly man?" Lin Miao described Li Sen's appearance to Zhang Lufang in detail. Every time she said a word, Zhang Lufang nodded, and the expression of surprise on her face became more and more serious. "You know, big blockhead. Are you really from the same hometown as him?" At this time, Zhou Qin also turned around and asked curiously, "Zhenren Zhang Lufang, how do you know Zhang?" "Ah no, Li Sen." Zhang Lufang smiled at her and said, "You can just call me Zhang Lufang. I'm not a Zhenren. I'm not good at fighting, but I'm good at causing trouble, he he." As soon as she said this, Zhou Qin immediately thought of Su Chan. She smiled, and her favorable impression of Zhang Lufang suddenly doubled. At this time, Zhang Lufang told her how she had found Li Sen, how she had brought him back, and how he had become a disciple of the Zhengyi school. Zi Yuan listened carefully. Zi Yuan had been listening carefully. At the end, she understood a little. It turned out that during the inauguration ceremony, someone had faintly shouted in the crowd, as if he was speaking up for her. At that time, she was in the limelight, but she didn't pay attention. She didn't expect that person to be Li Senator at this time. Zi Yuan couldn't help but turn around and ask, "How is Li Sen now?" Lin Miao couldn't wait to ask, "Yes, where is he?" Zhang Lufeng told her what had happened later. She sighed softly and said, "It's all my fault. If I hadn't been so nosy, how could so many things have happened?" At this time, Zi Yuan and Zhou Qin looked at each other. Only then did they understand why the ninth heaven divine night thunder had not killed the mystical silver fox. It was because of the coincidence between Li San and Zhang Lufeng that the mystical silver fox had escaped. Because of this, Li San had been expelled from the Xueqi school, and in the end, he had not been able to meet Lin Miao. At this time, the two of them sighed with emotion and shook their heads secretly. Zi Yuan said softly, "We meet in the mountains and rivers. We are fellow Taoists. Where can we not meet again? Lin Miao, you don't have to worry about him. I believe that Li Sen will have his own good fortune. Now that you know his whereabouts, you will definitely meet him again in the future." Lin Miao sighed softly and said, "I hope so." Zi Yuan didn't expect that their group of people had originally wanted to find Li Yundong's whereabouts, but they had accidentally found out Li Sen's whereabouts. It was really unintentional. She sighed anxiously in her heart and said, "I know Li Sen's whereabouts, but where is Li Yundong? I just came back from Nanjing with my wife. My back is aching. I'll try to write another chapter later." Chapter 899. Zi Yuan and the others inadvertently learned of Li Sen's whereabouts. Although Lin Miao wanted to find Li Sen and let him return to Li Yundong's side, Li Yundong's whereabouts were unknown now. As a disciple, she didn't dare to leave, so she could only suppress this idea for now. When Zi Yuan followed the male Taoist to the front of the Taoist master's mansion of the Xueqi school, Zhou Ping, who was on duty outside, saw them and was shocked. Although her prejudice against Zi Yuan and the others was not as deep as before, she was really shocked to see them in the heart of the Xueqi school. If Zi Yuan had come to Mount Longhu in the past, there would have been nothing to be surprised about. But now, Zi Yuan was an inner disciple of the Xueqi school. She had started cultivating in her mother's womb. She was also a Thunder Retribution Master and the successor leader of the Linggong sect. Whether it was in terms of qualifications, seniority or strength, she was a great master who could be on an equal footing with the leaders of all sects in China. Zhou Qin was also a Lightning Retribution Master, and she was Li Wudi's first disciple. In the future, she would definitely become an earth-shattering great cultivator. The two of them had come together. One could imagine how important they were. Even the Xueqi school did not dare to underestimate them. These two great thunder tribulation experts appeared in front of Celestial Master Mansion without warning. If they were hostile, the consequences would be unimaginable. Zhou Ping first politely and reservedly bowed to Zi Yuan, Zhou Qin, and the others, then glared at Zhang Lufeng and the Taoist priest who had led the way. She pulled them aside and scolded them in a low voice. "What are you doing? What kind of people were they now? How could they be casually released like this? What are they doing here?" Zhang Lufeng lowered her head and did not speak, but her eyes were rolling. She tried to look at the Shirdi next to her out of the corner of her eyes. At this time, the Shirdi also knew that he had done something wrong. He braced himself and said, "I brought her up here. I saw that Zhenren Zi Yuan was not an outsider, and she wanted to see the leader, so..." Zhou Ping said angrily in a low voice. "You also know to call her Zhenren Zi Yuan? If she's not an outsider, why don't you call her senior sister Zi Yuan? She could see the sect leader whenever she wanted to? Do you think this is a market? You think you can come and go as you please?" Zhang Lufeng whispered, "Eldest senior sister, you don't have to say that, do you? I heard from Zhenren Zi Yuan that there's a very urgent matter." Zhou Ping frowned secretly. Just as she was about to continue teaching Zhang Lufeng a lesson, a voice came from the side. "What's the matter?" It was Zhang Ling who had heard the noise and walked over. When Zhang Ling saw Zi Yuan, Zhou Qin, and the others, she was also shocked. She stepped forward and winked at Zhou Ping, indicating that she should deal with these matters. She bowed to Zi Yuan, Zhou Qin, Ruan Hongling, and Lin Miao, then said, "Amateus, We meet again, Zhenren Zi Yuan. What about Zhenren Li? He should be busy dealing with the sealed mystical silver fox now, right? Zi Yuan felt a little uneasy. She returned the salute and said, "To tell you the truth, we came here uninvited for this matter." Zhang Ling looked at her strangely and then said, "Sure enough, you don't come to the temple for nothing. What happened?" Zi Yuan sighed softly and told her what had happened. Then she knelt down gracefully and kowtowed to the place where Celestial Master Zhang was cultivating in seclusion. She said, "After thinking about it, we think that only Celestial Master Zhang is the most admirable in the cultivation world today. He can be said to be knowledgeable from ancient to modern times. He knows Chinese and Western things. He knows 2,000 years and 800 years. He will definitely be able to answer the doubts in our hearts. I think this matter is of great importance. It's not only related to the personal safety of Li Jiandong and Su Chan, but also the whereabouts of the mystical silver fox. I hope that Celestial Master Zhang will help us for the sake of the Buddha." During the inauguration ceremony, Zi Yuan had been under heavy pressure. She had never begged for mercy, let alone knelt down. But at this time, she bowed gracefully and prostrated herself on the ground. The others couldn't help sighing and pointing at her. Zhou Qin, who was standing to one side, saw her kowtow. Although she was a little reluctant, she still followed suit for the sake of her master. As soon as the two of them knelt down, Wan Hongling and Lin Miao had no choice but to kneel down as well. The four of them knelt on the ground in a row and begged in a low voice. Even Zhang Ling, who had a heart of stone, couldn't help but shake her head and soften her heart. She sighed in her heart, "I didn't expect Zi Yuan to be as affectionate as her master. She could actually do such a thing for Li Jiandong." Zhang Ling was very proud. She judged others by herself. She felt that if she were Zi Yuan, she would never do such a thing. She admired her in her heart. Just as she was about to speak, she heard a gentle voice say, "Not for the sake of the monk, but for the sake of the Buddha?" "Zi Yuan, when did you convert to Buddhism?" There was a hint of a smile in this sentence. Not only did it not sound abrupt, but it also made people feel close to her. Zi Yuan immediately raised her head and hurriedly asked, "Leader Tianchi, have you agreed to help us?" Zi Yuan's words were so fast that Celestial Master Zhang couldn't help but laugh. "Do you still recognize me as the leader of the sect? You're going to be the leader yourself. Isn't it a little inappropriate for you to talk like this?" Zi Yuan said softly, "Zi Yuan has always been a disciple of the Zhengyi school, and the Linggong sect is also a branch of the Zhengyi school. We are all connected. What's wrong with that?" Zhou Qin was listening to the conversation between Zi Yuan and Zhang Tianchi. She was thoughtful. She knew that with Zhang Tianchi's status, it was naturally impossible for him to speak carelessly. What he said was equivalent to letting Zi Yuan smoothly take over the position of the leader of the Linggong sect at the next inauguration ceremony. Moreover, he did not deny what he had said before, so she immediately followed up Zi Yuan's words and said, "Zhang Tianchi, as the saying goes, helping others is helping yourself. The mystical silver fox is the public enemy of our cultivation world. I think Zhang Tianchi will not sit back and do nothing, will he?" Zhang Tianchi smiled and said, "You little girl, you don't have to use words to mock me. Do you think I can refuse such a high compliment?" Zi Yuan, Zhou Qin, and the others were immediately overjoyed. They raised their heads one after another and looked in the direction of Zhang Tianchi's voice with joy. Zhang Tianchi said, "Zi Yuan, take out your two powerful magical weapons and let me have a look." Without hesitation, Zi Yuan immediately took out the powerful magical weapon and placed it in front of him. She said, "Please tell me." They opened their eyes wide and saw that Zhang Tianchi was nowhere to be seen. There was only a flash of cyan light, which was cast into the glass mirror of heaven. After a while, the glass mirror of heaven slowly floated above the purple-gold luo pan. A beam of purple light suddenly shone from the purple-gold luo pan, shining on the back of the glass mirror of heaven. In an instant, one picture after another appeared on the surface of the glass mirror of heaven. These pictures were the historical pictures recorded by the spirit mirror, from the beginning when Li Zichang created this powerful magical weapon, to the debate between Li Zichang and Ba Siba, to the cultivation of Ba Siba facing the spirit mirror and comprehending the mystery of time and space, and then to the successors of the spirit mirror. The people around the spirit mirror saw the pictures on the spirit mirror flash quickly, like a fast-paced scene in a movie. At this time, the picture changed, and it turned into the meeting between Zi Yuan and Li Jiandong. Then, Zi Yuan helped Li Jiandong resist the divine tribulation and destroyed the glass mirror of heaven. For a moment, everyone was silent, and the way they looked at Zi Yuan became somewhat complicated. Zhang Ling was even more enlightened. She thought to herself, no wonder Zi Yuan refused to say how this powerful magical weapon was damaged at the inauguration ceremony. It turns out that it was for Li Jiandong. It seems that the rumors about the two of them are not groundless. Even though Zi Yuan was calm and composed, she couldn't help but blush a little at this time. She just forced herself not to let the blush spread to her cheeks. Fortunately, the picture soon turned to the fierce battle between Li Jiandong and the others and the mystical silver fox. Then, the mystical silver fox was thrown into the purple-gold luo pan by the glass mirror of heaven. Soon, the souls of Li Jiandong and Su Chan were thrown into the purple-gold luo pan in the same way. At this time, Zi Yuan, Zhou Qin, and the others widened their eyes and saw it very clearly. Whether it was the mystical silver fox, Li Jiandong, or Su Chan, at the moment when they were about to be thrown into the purple-gold luo pan, a faint blue light immediately appeared around the purple-gold luo pan. As soon as this light touched the colorful light of the glass mirror of heaven, it immediately aroused a wave of ripples, shaking the surrounding air as if it was about to shatter. The figures of the mystical silver fox, Li Jiandong, and Su Chan disappeared in an instant. After reading it, Zi Yuan and Zhou Qin looked at each other. They vaguely felt that they had understood something, but they couldn't tell what it was exactly. Zi Yuan said helplessly, "Leader Tianshi, I've finished reading it. Please tell me." Tianshi Zhang chuckled and said, "Don't you understand after reading it? Zhenren Li and this little fox demon have now jumped out of the 3 realms and are no longer in the 5 elements." This sentence mostly referred to cultivators who had ascended to immortality. Zi Yuan was shocked and couldn't help but say in a trembling voice, "Ah? Have they become immortals? No way." Zhou Qin's body was even colder. She said in shock, "Impossible. Master won't leave us like this. This is impossible." However, Tianshi Zhang smiled and said, "Did I say that they have become immortals? I just said that they have jumped out of the 3 realms and are no longer in the 5 elements. As for what this sentence means, you have to figure it out yourself." Zhou Qin couldn't help asking, Tianshi Zhang, explain it clearly. We don't understand." Tianshi Zhang chuckled and said, "The secret of heaven can't be revealed. If you say too much, you will be punished by heaven. Immeasurable longevity and happiness." After that, there was no more sound. Zhou Qin exclaimed in unison, Hey, what does this mean?" Zhou Ping glared at her and shouted, "Zhenren Zhou, pay attention to your tone and words. Who are you talking to?" Zhou Qin was furious and subconsciously wanted to glare back, but thinking that she had just asked for help, she had no choice but to swallow her anger and think quickly with a frown. Zi Yuan knelt on the ground in a daze. Zhang Ling couldn't help but sigh when she saw her helpless look. She tried to persuade her in a low voice. "Zhenren Zi Yuan, please get up first. The leader has already given you the answer. The rest is up to you to figure it out yourself." Only then did Zi Yuan gradually come to her senses. She got up gracefully, and there was a large patch of dust on her knees. She was so clean that she didn't even notice it. She just walked away in a daze with Zhou Qin, Ruan Hongling, and Lin Miao. After watching them go down the mountain, Zhang Ling couldn't help but come to the immortal cloud cave and ask, "Shirdi, what do you mean? Do you know where Li Jiandong and the others have gone?" After a while, Zhang Tianshi said leisurely, "So what if I know? So what if I don't?" Zhang Ling said, "Oh, this is a big deal related to dealing with the mystical silver fox. If you know, tell them quickly. I'm worried." Zhang Tianshi chuckled and said, "Just now, Zi Yuan said that I know about it for 2,000 years, but if it's something that happened after 2,000 years, I don't think I know about it. Then I can only let her find it herself." Zhang Ling was stunned and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She said, "No way, Shirdi. How old are you? Are you still acting like a child?" Zhang Tianshi didn't comment. He smiled slightly and said, "Everything has its retribution, and karma comes from the mouth. Heaven and earth can't measure themselves, and the true way can be comprehended from it. Shimmy, please go back." Although Zhang Ling was also a great cultivator with a high cultivation quotient, when she heard this, she felt embarrassed. She said, "Hey, what do you mean by after 2,000 years? Hey, do you know about it or not?" But no matter what she said, Zhang Tianche didn't say another word, leaving her alone to think hard. What does this mean? Does my Xueqi know about it or not? Chapter 900. Zi Yuan and the others were fooled by Zhang Tianche and went down the mountain in a daze. When they arrived at the foot of the mountain, Xueqi said to Zi Yuan unwillingly, "Zi Yuan, what should we do now? This has jumped out of the 3 realms and is not in the 5 elements. What does it mean? No matter how I hear it, it sounds like Master has." As she spoke, she couldn't say the rest of her words, as if she was afraid that once she said it, it would become a prophecy. The reason why mortals were afraid of death was that death separated people from life and death forever. They were separated by 2 worlds and could never meet again. For cultivators, although ascension to immortality meant that a person had achieved positive results, it was not good news for those who were still cultivating hard in the mortal world, because it also meant that they and this person were separated by 2 worlds and it would be difficult for them to meet again. It was a nice way to say that a person had ascended to immortality and gone to the immortal world, but if they could never meet again, what was the difference between this person and being dead? At that time, the Xueqi school had spread the news that Wang Yuanshan had ascended to immortality. After learning this news, Ao Wushuang's temperament had changed greatly. That was why she had been able to change from an innocent girl to a cold and quiet woman. Yan Feng had even endured hardships and lurked in the Fox Zen school in an attempt to take revenge. The reason for their change was very simple. It was because they knew that ascension was a nice way to say it, but the actual answer was that Wang Yuanshan was already dead. Xueqi was afraid that Li Yundong would be like Wang Yuanshan, ascending to immortality on the surface, but in fact, he was already dead. Zi Yuan was also right about what she was most worried about. Her face turned pale and she murmured in a low voice, "No, how can there be such a way to ascend in the world? Since ancient times, whenever a cultivator ascended, there would be strange phenomena in heaven and earth. Whether it was an eminent monk passing away or a Taoist priest's corpse ascending, there would definitely be colorful clouds and rays of light. How could Li Yundong and Su Chan, who had disappeared for no reason, be ascending?" But understanding the truth and whether people could accept and convince their hearts were 2 different things. Xueqi and Zi Yuan knew that this should not be a sign of ascension, but they always had this terrible guess hanging in their hearts, and it was difficult for them to let it go. The 2 of them were deeply in love with Li Yundong, and they had long been deeply involved in the game and could not extricate themselves from it. Usually, they were strange women whose hearts were thundering and whose faces were as calm as a lake. However, the people involved in the game could not see clearly. The 2 of them had come full of hope, but they had received a piece of news that they could not understand. This really made them confused, and their usual cleverness had flown beyond the clouds. However, Ruan Hongling was still able to jump out at this time. She said tentatively, "Shiji, Xueqi, since Celestial Master Zhang has asked us to figure out what this sentence means by ourselves, there's no need for us to hang on to the tree of the Xueqi school. Should we go to the other sects and ask?" Xueqi said bitterly, "Even Zhang Tianche of the Xueqi school doesn't know. Who else in the world would know?" Although Xueqi was quite prejudiced against the Xueqi school, she also knew that Zhang in the south and Kong in the north. Whether she liked it or not, the Xueqi school was the largest and oldest cultivation sect in the Chinese cultivation world, and Zhang Tianche's lineage was the cultivation family with the longest history in the Chinese cultivation world. It had a history of nearly 2,000 years. In terms of foundation and bearing, there was no one in the world who could be more profound than them. If Celestial Master Zhang didn't know, then she really couldn't think of anyone else who would know. Ruan Hongling looked at her strangely and said, "Aren't there still Buddhist cultivators? There may not be anyone more profound and knowledgeable than Zhang Tianche in Taoism, but there must be someone in Buddhism, right? Maybe there are eminent monks in Buddhism who know what the sentence means?" This sentence suddenly woke Xueqi up from her dream. Xueqi clapped her hands and her eyes lit up. "Yes, Hongling, what you said makes sense. Let's go. If we can't get anything out of the ox nose, let's go ask the bald monk." Strictly speaking, Xueqi was neither a Taoist nun nor a nun. Although she was also a cultivator, she didn't cut her hair to cultivate like the Buddhists, nor did she deliberately grow her hair to cultivate like the Taoist priests. She didn't rely on either side, so she didn't have a strong awe for Taoist priests or monks like Zi Yuan did. When she said this, Zi Yuan's heart was heavy, and she couldn't help but feel a little amused at this time. Zi Yuan glanced at Xueqi reproachfully and said in a low voice, Xueqi, if your heart is not sincere, then you won't be able to get any results. Buddhist cultivators are very sincere. Xueqi's face became solemn and she said seriously, I see. I will definitely respect all the masters very much later. After she finished speaking, she quickly frowned and said, but, which master should we go to ask? Which master is good at Zen and dispelling mysteries? Ruan Hongling chimed in, monks are all good at playing tricks, but among the 6 divine arts that monks cultivate, I think we should find someone who's proficient in the art of destiny, someone who can see through the secrets of the heavens. A simple-minded person would often look at a problem in a very simple manner. In some special situations, they would be able to hit the nail on the head. On the other hand, a person with a deep and complicated mind would sometimes be overcautious and overcautious. They would think of all sorts of things and would always want to take care of everything to achieve perfection. Zi Yuan had been thinking about the names of the famous eminent monks in the Buddhist cultivation world. She was going to visit them one by one. If the other party didn't help, she would beg them humbly. But she wasn't like Ruan Hongling, whose first thought was to think of a great acquaintance. Ruan Hongling said, look for Master Wu Hua. Didn't he predict the birth of the mystical silver fox? Xueqi and Zi Yuan were stunned at the same time. Master Wu Hua? Xueqi asked in surprise. That lascivious monk? Zi Yuan also blurted out, that flowery monk? After the two of them finished speaking, they immediately looked at each other, their expressions indescribably strange and wonderful. Xueqi frowned. Does this lascivious monk know Master's whereabouts? Zi Yuan's eyes were a little blank. She couldn't help but remember that she and Li Jiandong had gone to the red light district of Dongwu City to look for Master Wu Hua. The usually elegant fairy had a strange expression on her face. She said hesitantly, him? Can he really do it? At this time, Ruan Hongling was very straightforward. Won't we know if we go and have a look? If he can't do it, we'll go to Master Purin and ask him again. Xueqi and Zi Yuan looked at each other. After thinking for a while, they nodded in unison and said, okay. Lin Miao didn't know who the lascivious monk they were talking about was at all. She was extremely curious. She just blinked her big blue eyes and looked at Zi Yuan and then at Xueqi. After they took her to Dongwu City, she asked Zi Yuan in a low voice. Zi Yuan, who is this Wu Hua? Is he a lecher? Zi Yuan glanced at Lin Miao and secretly admired her for knowing to use such elegant words as lecher to describe this lascivious monk. She was a gentleman and didn't like to gossip behind people's backs. After thinking for a while, she didn't know what to say. However, Xueqi, who was not far away, heard her and turned her head to say, lecher? You're really polite. As she said this, Xueqi told her about Master Wu Hua's glorious deeds. When she got to the part where Master Wu Hua said, I want Miss, Lin Miao almost laughed out loud. The blonde beauty burst into laughter in shock. She said in surprise, oh my God, how could there be such a lecherous monk? I heard that cultivators have a pure heart and few desires, don't they? Xueqi laughed and said, I'm just kidding. Wu Zetian's most famous gigolo in the Tang dynasty was a handsome monk named Xueqi. Her daughter, Princess Taiping, also had a gigolo, who was also a monk. There are many Buddhist cultivators who practice Buddha of joy, and there are also many Taoists who practice yin and yang. You should know the most famous Taoist, Lu Dongbin, who is known as wine, sex, avarice, and anger. This immortal Lu is a romantic and elegant man. He has had countless women in his life. I can't finish talking about his romantic life for days and nights. Lin Miao was stunned when she heard this. She saw that there were so many beautiful women around Li Yundong, and almost every one of them was as beautiful as her. She was a famous campus belle at the University of Pennsylvania and the dream lover of all the boys in the school. Every boy who saw her would come forward to please her, but Li Yundong was the only one who had been treating her like a gentleman from beginning to end. When she saw Li Yundong like this, she thought that all the cultivators in the world were like Li Yundong. They were surrounded by flowers, but they were always clean. They were simply the contemporary Luxiaowi. But after hearing Xueqi's words, Lin Miao realized that the Chinese cultivation world was not like this at all. Zi Yuan saw that Lin Miao was stunned, as if she had a new understanding of the Chinese cultivation world. She quickly said, in fact, it's not completely like that. Strictly speaking, these cultivators can be said to be experiential, but their cultivation methods are different. There are tens of thousands of cultivation methods in the world, and this is just one of them. As the saying goes, all roads lead to Rome. As long as one can cultivate to the peak in the end, any method is acceptable. Master Wu Hua's words and deeds are a little strange, but there is no doubt about his cultivation quotient. Zhou Qin thought that after all, she was asking for help. It seemed a little inappropriate to talk about people behind their backs. She didn't say anything more and turned her head away. Lin Miao asked curiously, "So this strange monk should be very capable?" Zi Yuan said seriously, "Master Wu Hua is a genius recognized by Buddhists as a once-in-a-50-year genius. His karmic cultivation has reached the pinnacle, so he can see through the secrets of heaven. I think this is why his words and deeds are a little strange." Only then did Lin Miao feel a little respect for the monk, and he became curious in his heart. When the group of people flew from Mount Longhu to Dongwu City, it was already afternoon. Zi Yuan and Zhou Qin took Ruan Hongling and Lin Miao. The four beautiful women went straight to Shiyuan Temple. As soon as they arrived at the door, Zi Yuan saw a young novice monk who was greeting guests and quickly walked over. Because there were many tourists around at this time, the young novice monk was so shocked that his eyes almost popped out when he saw Zi Yuan, a stunning beauty. When they walked in front of him, he suddenly came to his senses. He quickly put his palms together and lowered his head, not daring to look at Zi Yuan. Zi Yuan put her palms together and said to the young novice monk, "Xixiang, is Master Wu Hua here?" When the young novice monk heard this, his expression became even more strange. He squinted his eyes and saw a monk passing by. He quickly shouted, "Xixiang Fanning, come here quickly." This Fanning was none other than the monk who had led Li Yunyang and the others to Wu Hua before. Fanning walked over with a puzzled look on his face. He greeted Zi Yuan and the others and asked, "Zhenren, what's the matter?" The young novice monk quickly said, "These female benefactors are looking for Xixiang Wu Hua. Xixiang Fanning, take them there." As he said this, he ran away, as if he was afraid that he would be involved in this matter. Fanning was shocked. Looking at the young novice monk running away quickly, he stamped his feet and said angrily, "Hey, come back, come back." As he said this, he was about to chase after him, but Zhou Qin was waiting impatiently. Ignoring the tourists nearby, she grabbed his collar, raised her eyebrows, stared at him, and said in a low voice, "Take us to Wu Hua. If you refuse, I will shout that you molested her." As she said this, Zhou Qin pointed at Ruan Hongling behind her. Ruan Hongling was shocked. "Why me?" Zhou Qin turned around and glared at her. She mouthed silently, "Nonsense, is it me?" Ruan Hongling was flustered and exasperated. She was about to lose her temper and argue with Zhou Qin, but Zi Yuan pulled her and motioned for her not to speak. Ruan Hongling was so angry in her heart. "Good Shiji, you really sold me out for your lover. What a woman." Fanning was also shocked. "Zhenren Zhou, calm down. If you have something to say, let's talk it out. Buddha won't believe you if you talk nonsense like this." Zhou Qin smiled maliciously and said, "It doesn't matter whether Buddha believes it or not, but I know that 80% of these people who burn incense and worship Buddha will believe it." As he said this, Fanning couldn't help looking to the side. Sure enough, he saw a group of onlookers who didn't know the truth widening their eyes. Some of them even turned on the camera function of their mobile phones. Fanning complained in his heart. He knew that Zhou Qin was famous for her strong temper in the Chinese cultivation world. She would do what she said. If they made a fuss, he was afraid that the reputation of Shiyuan Temple would be implicated by him. Amit ba. Zhenren Zhou is too cruel, isn't she? Fanning's face was so bitter that he could almost squeeze out bile. He said with a sad face, "Don't, Zhenren Zhou, please be merciful. I'll take you there, okay?" Chapter 901. Seeing that Fa Nang had given in, Zhou Qin snorted. She glanced around and saw that many monks in the temple were secretly looking at them, pointing at them and laughing secretly. When they saw Zhou Qin looking at them, they immediately turned their heads away. With a solemn expression on their faces, they raised one hand and went into the temple in a line. Fanning said to Zhou Qin with a tearless face, "Zhenren Zhou, let go of me. Buddha said that men and women should not touch each other. What are you doing?" Zhou Qin let go of his collar and said unforgivingly, "Bah, is this what Buddha said?" When did Mencius become Buddha? I've learned a lot. Don't you read books? Faning's face turned red, and he was so ashamed that he really wanted to dig a hole in the ground and hide in it. He put his palms together and said to Zi Yuan with a twisted face, "Zhenren Zi Yuan, come with me. I'll take you to Shixiang Wuhua." Shiyuan Temple was located on Shiyuan Road in Dongwu City, and there was a small moat next to it. Zi Yuan saw that Zhou Qin was in extreme pain. If it weren't for the onlookers blocking the way at this time, Fanning would have turned around and jumped into the river. Zi Yuan glared at Zhou Qin reproachfully. She said to Fanning politely, "Master Fanning, please lead the way." Fanning quickly waved his hand and said, "I don't dare to call myself master. Zhenren Zi Yuan. Just call me Fanning." After that, he didn't dare to look at Zi Yuan and Zhou Qin again, as if looking at them one more time would cause endless trouble. Fanning lowered his head all the way and walked out quickly. Zi Yuan and Zhou Qin followed behind him. After they stopped a taxi, they soon arrived at Mudu Hong Kong Street, which they hadn't seen for a long time. In their group, there was a monk and 4 stunning beauties. Fanning sat in the front row, while Zi Yuan, Zhou Qin, Ruan Hongling, and Lin Miao sat side by side in the back row because of their slim figures, so it wasn't crowded. The driver driving in front had a strange expression on his face all the way, especially when he heard that they were going to Mudu Hong Kong Street. He kept glancing at Zi Yuan and the others in the rearview mirror. After they got out of the car, the driver stepped on the accelerator and muttered in Dongwu dialect, "What morning light is that? So thick, let the flowers wipe." However, he was secretly cursing. In this day and age, even monks were so flirtatious. What kind of world was this? Even the driver had such a perverted thought, let alone the guests in the red light district. Along the way, countless people looked at Zi Yuan and the others with surprised and doubtful eyes. Some men were really shocked when they saw Zi Yuan. They didn't dare to have any evil thoughts in their hearts, let alone go forward to ask about the price. Last time, with Li Jidong, they had been accompanied by him. With his appearance and his temperament, others didn't dare to look at them. But they were they Fanning they Li and they and Li Li. Li and Dong in Li. But they in and in they Qin and... Didn't we already pass the Crystal Love International Entertainment City? Fanning put his palms together and said with a wry smile, "Zhenren Zhou, my Shixiang is not here." He went to another shop to beg for alms today. Beg for alms? Zhou Qin laughed and sneered. Is he begging for naughty things? Fanning's face turned red, and he braced himself to say, "Shixiang's spiritual energy is profound. We don't understand his words and deeds." Zhou Qin snorted and stopped talking to him. She just urged him to hurry up and lead the way. Before long, they arrived in front of a sauna. The sauna didn't look big, and there were a few pink lights at the door, which really annoyed Zhou Qin. She glanced around and saw that most of the women in the shop were vulgar. They were dressed very violently, and their faces were covered with heavy makeup. If she hadn't come here twice to look for naughty things, she would never have set foot in such a place in her life. Zhou Qin thought highly of herself. Not only was she lofty, but she also had a bit of moral cleanliness. She looked down on this kind of woman who did naughty things from the bottom of her heart. Seeing this place, how could she show a good face? Zhou Qin turned her head and asked Fanning, "Is your Shixiang here?" Fanning said with a wry smile, "Shixiang has recently enlightened a woman in this shop. It should be her." Zhou Qin sneered and said, "Enlightening a woman? Do you need to do it in such a place? Since you know that your Shixiang is here, it seems that you are not a good person. Humph, you are just as bad as him." Fanning really wanted to kill himself in front of the pink lights. He said tearlessly, "No, I've never been to this place." As soon as he finished speaking, he saw Madame Mulberry come out and say to Fanning with a smile on her face, "Oh, Master Fanning, you're here again. Come on in and sit down." Hearing this, Ruan Hongling couldn't help but burst into laughter. Lin Miao also burst into laughter. He turned his face away and his shoulders kept shaking. Fanning's face turned purplish red, like a pig's liver. He couldn't speak for a while, so he just looked at Zi Yuan for help. Zi Yuan said helplessly to Zhou Qin, "Zhou Qin, stop talking. Hurry up and find someone." Zhou Qin sneered and shouted at Madame Mulberry, "Hey, call Wu Hua out." Madame Mulberry put one hand on her waist and held a cigarette in the other. She said in a very coarse voice, Oh, who are you? What's your relationship with Master Wu Hua? What's your relationship with Master Fanning? When these beautiful women stood at the door, they naturally attracted a lot of attention. With a monk standing among them, it was even more eye-catching. Madame Mulberry had seen them for a long time. Although she was not a romantic figure like Mei Nyang, she was also a person who rolled around in pleasure circles. Her eyesight was very vicious, and she could tell at a glance that Zhou Qin and the others had come with ill intentions. She had also seen Fanning and Wu Hua come to the shop together, and she had also heard Wu Hua call the monk Fanning. Therefore, she preemptively told Zhou Qin, "The person who came with you is not a gentleman. Don't try to do this. Save it." Madame Mulberry's idea was not bad. This was very useful for many women who wanted to save face. But what kind of person was Zhou Qin? She was a strong person who could fight with others head-on and break her bones as if nothing had happened. How could she give up just because of a few words? When Zhou Qin heard Madame Mulberry's words, she was so angry that she raised her eyebrows. She didn't talk nonsense with Madame Mulberry and went straight inside. She walked up to Madame Mulberry, pulled her arm, and pushed her. "Get out of my way." What kind of cultivation quotient was she? Although she didn't use much strength, Madame Mulberry immediately flew out. After flying in the air for a while, she fell to the ground with a bang and screamed like a pig being slaughtered. Come on, come on! Where are all the people? Hurry up and chase these crazy women out for this old lady." Almost every entertainment venue had its own security guards. As soon as Madame Mulberry shouted, a few strong thugs immediately ran down. When they saw Zhou Qin standing at the front, they were stunned. They had been rolling around in prostitution and had seen a lot of beautiful women, but they had never seen a woman with such temperament, outstanding figure, and stunning beauty. Especially when they looked back and saw Zi Yuan again, they didn't know how to walk or speak. Each of them widened their eyes and stood motionless as if they had been immobilized. Until Madame Mulberry howled. "What are you waiting for? Why aren't you going to attack me? Who usually takes care of you?" Only then did these thugs wake up as if they had just woken up from a dream. One by one, they rushed forward. However, being beautiful was indeed an advantage. Although these thugs looked fierce with bulging eyes, they had made up their minds not to hurt such a beautiful woman. However, they had pity for her, but Zhou Qin had no intention of being soft-hearted. She snorted coldly, and the others saw her waving her slender hand. Suddenly, these burly men flew out of the door like little children and fell heavily on the road. They were confused and cried out. The eyes of the bystanders bulged out, and they were shocked. "Damn! Is this a beautiful girl? This woman is too powerful, isn't she?" Seeing that the situation had developed so much, Zi Yuan complained in her heart, but she couldn't say anything. She just whispered to Zhou Qin, "Hurry up and go in. I've already locked on to Master Wu Hua's location." After hearing this, Zhou Qin didn't even look at them and rushed straight in. The people in the sauna saw that she was so domineering and fierce, so no one dared to stop her. When a technician and a young lady saw her coming over, they immediately screamed and dodged, as if they had seen a ghost. Then they watched her walk inside. There were many rooms in the sauna room, and there was a door separating them. Along the way, the lights were dim and ambiguous, and the soundproofing effect was excellent. Even if there was a huge commotion outside, no sound could be heard from inside. Of course, by the same logic, even if there was a huge commotion inside, no sound could be heard from outside. After entering the door, they could hear a burst of low and obscene sounds. The four great beauties, Zi Yuan, Zhou Qin, Ruan Hongling, and Lin Miao, all blushed when they heard this sound. Zhou Qin gritted her teeth and thought to herself, "Wu Hua, if you don't know where master is, I'll teach you a lesson." Under Zi Yuan's guidance, she walked straight to a dark room. As soon as she reached the door, she heard a clear voice coming from inside. It would have been better if she hadn't heard it, but as soon as she did, anger rose in her heart, and she became even more daring. It was a man in the room who said slowly, "Amitba, benefactress, please forgive me for not being able to consecrate the light through your clothes. Please take off your clothes." Zhou Qin was furious. Without saying a word, she raised her leg and kicked the door open. She rushed in angrily. / Uploaded by bookfriend / Chapter 902. Xueqi kicked the door open, and a scream came from inside. She took a closer look and saw an enchanting woman in the room looking at the door in panic. She was wearing a cheongsam, and her clothes had been pulled down to her chest, revealing a snow-white chest and a deep ravine. She was almost there. At this time, the light in the room was dim and ambiguous. This woman had amazing curves and was indescribably seductive. What a stunner! Xueqi rushed into the room angrily, and Ziyuan, who was beside her, couldn't stop her. She felt a headache coming on. Inside the room, Wu Hua was looking at the door. When he saw Xueqi, he was stunned for a moment. Just as he was about to speak, he saw that Xueqi had already rushed up to him angrily. Xueqi resisted the urge to pick up Wu Hua. She gritted her teeth and sneered. "Master Wu Hua, may I ask what you are doing here?" Wu Hua seemed to have expected such a thing. He stood up calmly, bowed solemnly, and said, "It turns out to be Benefactor Xueqi. I haven't seen you for a long time. Please forgive me for my rudeness. I'm doing this for this benefactor." Xueqi said angrily, "If you dare say that you are blessing her, I will slap you to death." Wu Hua paused for a moment, and then said, "I'm doing this for this benefactor." Xueqi rushed to say, "If you dare say that you are healing her through her clothes, I will slap you to death." Wu Hua's expression was strange. He glanced at the woman next to him, and then at Xueqi. He put his palms together, chanted the name of Buddha, and said, "Amitba, lust." Xueqi rushed to say, "Amitba, my ass. If you dare say that lust is emptiness and emptiness is lust, I will slap you to death." The corner of Wu Hua's eyes twitched. He looked at Xueqi helplessly and said, "Benefactor, you haven't heard of." Unexpectedly at this time, Xueqi rushed to say again, "Nonsense, if you dare say that wine and lust pass through your intestines and Buddha sits in your heart, I will." Before she could finish her words, Yuan Hongling next to her said in unison, "I will slap you to death." After that, she burst into laughter with Lin Miao beside her. Wu Hua looked up to the sky and sighed. "Benefactor Zhou, you can slap me to death." Although Ziyuan felt that it was a little inappropriate, she couldn't help laughing when she saw Wu Hua, who was eloquent and had a painful expression on his face. However, she was calm after all. She pulled Xueqi's arm and motioned for her not to go too far. Then she said to Wu Hua, "Master Wu Hua, it's really rude of us to come here. Why don't we go out and wait for you for a few minutes?" Wu Hua waved his hand and said with a solemn expression, "I'm purifying the secular world. What's there to be ashamed about?" Xueqi was so angry that she laughed. She pointed to the side and said, "Master Wu Hua, can you please put on your pants first when you talk seriously in the future?" Wu Hua's expression froze for a moment, before returning to normal. He calmly put on his long pants and tidied up his clothes. Then he asked sternly, "What business do you have with me?" Xueqi snorted. Even if she wanted to ask for help, she didn't know what to say at this time. She really didn't believe that this monk could find Li Yundong. Ziyuan no longer had any hope, but since she was already here, she had to take things as they were. She said softly, "Master Wu Hua, aren't you proficient in karmic divination? You must be able to guess why we're here, right?" Wu Hua glanced at them, then smiled slightly and said, "You guys are inseparable from Zhenren Li. This time, you came here so abruptly, and Benefactor Zhou ruined my plan. There must be something urgent. If I'm not wrong, something must have happened to Zhenren Li. You want to ask me, right?" Ziyuan was stunned for a moment, then she smiled appreciatively and said, "Master Wu Hua is really smart. Yes, that's why we're here." As she spoke, she briefly told him what had happened. Then she asked anxiously and worriedly, "Master Wu Hua, we have no idea what to do now. Please help us." Wu Hua smiled, put his palms together, and said, "Amitba, Zhenren Li is the reincarnation of Wisdom King. He won't die so easily. If he becomes a Buddha, it's impossible for us not to know." Xueqi said, "Don't you think we know that? We just want to know where my master has gone. Aren't you proficient in karmic divination? I think you should know where my master has gone. If you can help us find him, I will definitely treat you well." Wu Hua smiled and said, "If you don't slap me to death, this poor monk will be very satisfied." Xueqi snorted. Just as she was about to retort, she suddenly saw that the enchanting woman had already taken off her clothes. There seemed to be a tail flashing quickly under the hem of her dress. It was so fast that it looked like an illusion. If it weren't for the fact that Xueqi had cultivated to the Thunder Retribution realm and had a pair of fiery eyes, she would have thought that she was hallucinating. Xueqi was stunned for a moment. When she raised her head to look at the woman, she saw that she had already hidden behind Wu Hua in panic. She wanted to see what was going on, but it was already too late. Xueqi was shocked and doubtful. What the hell is this monk doing? Is this woman a demon? Is she really avoiding evil and purifying? Even if she wants to purify, she doesn't need to be enlightened. Do you think you're the abbot of Shaolin Temple? However, at this time, Xueqi couldn't care less about this. She asked, "Do you have a way? If you have a way, tell me quickly. I will definitely thank you later." Wu Hua smiled and said, "It's the duty of us cultivators to help the righteous way. What's more, Zhenrenli has a deep relationship with our Buddhist sect. In addition, the calamity of the world has not been resolved, so I should help you." As he spoke, he turned back and whispered a few words to the woman behind him. Then he turned to Xueqi, Ziyuan, and the others and said, "Benefactors, please come with me. It's a little inconvenient for us to talk outside." The woman looked at Wu Hua reluctantly and said softly, "Master, please come again next time." Wu Hua said with a serious face, "Please rest assured, benefactor. I will definitely come again." Xueqi and Ziyuan looked at each other awkwardly. No matter how they listened, it felt awkward. Xueqi coughed dryly, while Ziyuan pretended not to hear it with a straight face. Just as they were about to go out, they saw a group of people rushing in from outside. It was the thugs from the sauna room. With the encouragement of Madame Sang, they had regrouped and were ready to come in and arrest the people. Xueqi frowned, sneered, and said in a low voice, "They won't cry until they see the coffin." Then, she prepared to go up again. But at this time, Wu Hua smiled and said, "Benefactor Zhou, everything in the world is a trick. Why do you care about them?" As he spoke, he pinched his fingers together. After the thugs who had rushed in looked around for a while, they actually passed by them as if they hadn't seen them at all. Xueqi was a little impressed by Wu Hua. She looked him up and down seriously, and the hope in her heart suddenly increased a little. After they left the fragrant red light district, Ziyuan, Xueqi, and the others immediately breathed a sigh of relief. Wu Hua put his palms together and said, "Benefactors, we are out now. Is there a quiet place for me to practice?" Ziyuan said, "Master Wu Hua, why don't we go to the Taoist field on Mount Tianlong? It's quiet and remote there." Wu Hua smiled and said, "It turns out to be the old place of the Fox Zen school. Well, where does the cause and effect begin? Naturally, it should be here." Xueqi saw that his words were full of deep meaning, and her heart moved slightly. She seemed to have thought of something, but it was vague and she couldn't figure it out clearly. Seeing that she couldn't figure it out, Xueqi stopped thinking about it. They soon arrived at the stone cave of the secret chamber of the Fox Zen school. Wu Hua looked around and nodded frequently. Especially when he saw the big words written by the mystical silver fox on the stone wall, he couldn't help putting his palms together and saying, "Amitba, the cause of all things is this." Good. Ziyuan was not in the mood to think about the meaning of her words. After she took out the purple gold luo pan and the sky-reaching glass mirror, she said to Wu Hua, "Master Wu Hua, come and take a look. What's wrong with these two powerful magical weapons?" After we asked Celestial Master Zhang, he said that Li Yundong had jumped out of the 3 realms and was no longer in the 5 elements. What does this mean? Master, please help us solve this problem. Wu Hua chuckled and walked to the side of the 2 powerful magical weapons. He rolled up the sleeve of the other hand with one hand, and gently pinched his fingers with the other, like Buddha holding a flower and smiling. He gently pointed to the sky-reaching glass mirror and said, "Zhenren Ziyuan, can you let me have a look?" Ziyuan quickly stepped aside and said, "Master, please have a look." Wu Hua stretched out his hand and gently touched the surface of the sky-reaching glass mirror with his finger. Suddenly, the mirror began to surge, and soon, one picture after another appeared on the mirror, which was the same as when Celestial Master Zhang had done it. Wu Hua looked at the mirror seriously. After all the pictures had passed, he reached out to the purple gold luo pan again. As soon as his finger touched the luo pan, a purple halo appeared on it. The halos were like ripples, one layer after another. Wu Hua looked at the waves that were constantly spreading around and sighed softly. This magical item is really amazing. Look, between each wave, there is a small kiliacosm. As he spoke, he looked up at Zi Yuan and smiled. I think I already know where Zhenren Li is. Zi Yuan and Zhou Qin immediately asked nervously in unison, where is he? Lin Miao and Ruan Hongling also clenched their fists and looked at Wu Hua with their eyes wide open. Wu Hua smiled and said, he is no longer in this world. Zi Yuan and Zhou Qin suddenly trembled, as if they had been struck by lightning. They were so scared that their faces turned pale. Zi Yuan's face was as white as paper, and she said in a trembling voice, could it be that he has really? Zhou Qin's body also swayed, as if she was about to fall at any time. That's impossible. Master can't just leave us like this. Wu Hua looked at them strangely and said, I didn't say that he was dead. I just said that he went to another kiliacosm. Zi Yuan and Zhou Qin were stunned for a moment. Only then did they come to their senses. Zhou Qin was angry and annoyed. Why are you panting while talking? Zi Yuan didn't care about him. She quickly asked anxiously. Then where is he? Wu Hua chuckled and pointed his finger forward. Right here. Chapter 903. Wu Hua pointed forward, but Zi Yuan and Zhou Qin saw that he was pointing at the sky-reaching glazed mirror. The two of them looked at each other, and Zi Yuan asked in confusion, here? Wu Hua smiled and said, that's right. Zhenren Li has already jumped out of the 3 realms and is no longer in the 5 elements. Naturally, he has gone to other small worlds. Buddha says that karma should end where it starts. Zhenren Li and the mystical silver fox disappeared because of this powerful magical weapon. So we should naturally start from this powerful magical weapon. Zi Yuan hesitated and said, Master Wu Hua, I understand what you said, but there are 36,000 methods in Buddhism, and there are hundreds of millions of small worlds in Taoism. There are so many small worlds. Where can we find Li Yundong? Wu Hua smiled, put his palms together, and said, Amitba, I need Zhenren Zi Yuan's help. He pointed to the sky-reaching glazed mirror and said, Zhenren Zi Yuan, please help me later. Mobilize your spiritual power and Zhenqi to drive this powerful magical weapon. I will find a way to find where Zhenren Li is, but I can't guarantee that it will be accurate. Zi Yuan was skeptical, but there was no better way at the moment. She hesitated for a moment and said, Well, thank you, Master Wu Hua. As she said this, she activated her Zhenqi and flew into the air with the powerful magical weapon. Ruan Hongling and Lin Miao, who were next to her, saw that the mirror quickly cast a colorful divine light, shining straight on the ground. Wu Hua nodded and said, Zhenren Zi Yuan, please shine this divine light here. As he said this, he pointed to the purple gold luo pan next to him. Zi Yuan controlled the powerful magical weapon and shone the beam of light toward the purple gold luo pan. She saw that the beam of light was no different from before, but at this time, Wu Hua stretched out his hand and pointed at the back of the purple gold luo pan. In an instant, the purple gold luo pan buzzed, and countless purple light waves suddenly rippled out, merging with the colorful divine light. Suddenly, the room was filled with brilliance, dazzling people. Wu Hua's fingers fluttered like a blooming lotus, while his other hand formed a palm. He said in an evil tone, My heart contains the 10 Dharma realms. 1 Dharma realm contains the 10 Dharma realms and the 100 Dharma realms. 1 world has 30 worlds. The 100 Dharma realm has 3,000 worlds. However, the mind is all Dharma, and all Dharma is the mind. It is neither vertical nor horizontal, neither one nor different, it is profound and solitary, it is not known by knowledge, it is not spoken by words. As he spoke, his eyes shone with a profound brilliance. His gaze was like a torch, as he pointed towards the ever-changing image of the sky-piercing glass mirror. Instantly, the stone chamber buzzed, as though a bomb had exploded. The sound was oppressive, and the air trembled violently. Then, a rainbow halo appeared behind the amethyst gold luo pan with a hissing sound. The halo was so dense that it looked like spilled paint, and couldn't be dissolved. At this time, Wu Hua shouted, 3,000 worlds, 1 billion mortal worlds, open. Suddenly, the colorful halo was pulled apart, and a huge black hole appeared in the middle. Black mist could be faintly seen spinning and twisting in the black hole. It was so deep that it was bottomless. Zi Yuan and Zhou Qin knew that Wu Hua was proficient in the predestination art, but they didn't know that he was more proficient in the heavenly eye art, one of the 6 great magical powers of Buddhism. The so-called heavenly eye art meant that one could see the cause and effect of the 3 lives of all living beings, as well as the place of reincarnation in the cycle of life and death. The predestination art allowed one to know what had happened to oneself and others in the past. Knowing the future was the function of the heavenly eye art, but the future was uncertain, so it was generally not absolutely correct. However, the method of the past was extremely accurate and could be found by human beings. After the eminent monks of Tibetan Buddhism passed away, their disciples or other monks would look for their reincarnation everywhere. At this time, they needed a monk with profound spiritual power, the heavenly eye art, and the predestination art to take the lead. Otherwise, in the vast sea of people, they might not be able to find the reincarnated spirit boy even if they searched for a lifetime. Xueqi, Ruan Hongling, and Lin Miao were all stunned. At this time, Wu Hua turned his head and shouted at them. "Why aren't you going in to look for him?" Xueqi seemed to have just woken up from a dream. Without thinking about it, she gritted her teeth and rushed in a flash. Ruan Hongling, who was beside her, let out a sigh. Just as she was about to reach out to stop her, she saw her figure move and disappear into the dark cave in the blink of an eye. She was stunned for a moment and stared straight at the dark cave. She gritted her teeth, stamped her feet, and rushed in as well. Her figure disappeared in an instant. The 2 of them disappeared in the blink of an eye, leaving only Lin Miao standing there alone. Although she also wanted to go, she saw that the divine light was colorful and unusually bright. It didn't seem like a color that could exist in the mortal world. Her eyes widened, and seeing that the pillar of light was very close to her, she curiously wanted to touch it with her hand. Just as she reached out her hand and touched the colorful light, she immediately felt a strong suction force coming from it. Her vision went black, and she was instantly sucked in. She was a little bit surprised. She didn't know what to do. Zi Yuan, who was watching from a high place, was very anxious. Just as she was about to scream, she heard Wu Hua say loudly, "Zi Yuan, you can't be distracted. You have to keep this powerful magical weapon. Otherwise, when the door closes, they won't be able to come back." Zi Yuan's heart sank, and she didn't dare to be distracted anymore. However, she was secretly anxious. She didn't know where Xueqi and the others had gone, whether they would meet Li Yunyang, and whether they could come back together. At this time, the cultivators of various sects in Japan were rushing to Tiannan City in great numbers for the sake of Ise Shengguang and Ise Chuyun of the Ise Shinto. Unlike the last time, this time, only 1 or 2 people from each sect in the Japanese cultivation world had come. Basically, all of them were people who were good at politics and had a good relationship with both sides. Last time, they had come to China to fight PK naturally, they had sent out all their elites. It was fine as long as they could fight. The more trash like Takahashi Masashi, the better. But this time, things were different. This time they were not here to fight. They were here to see the reincarnated Wisdom King. If a few more trash like Takahashi Masashi came, they would anger Wisdom King. That would not be good. Ise Shengguang was quite eloquent, and he was quite popular in the Japanese cultivation world. Kaisai Hikaryuni of Shingon Tantrism was not coming this time, and Imagawa Kagumo had already passed away. The great monks of Pure Land True Sect were busy holding a funeral at the Wish Temple. The patriarch of the Abe family had just died, and the 3 great priests of Yoshikawa Shinto, Yoshida Shinto, and Chuka Shinto had all died. It could be said that the elites of the top generation in the Japanese cultivation world had almost been wiped out in these consecutive battles, so the responsibility of leading the team naturally fell on Ise Shengguang. If it had been in normal times, these Japanese people might have argued. Where there were people, there would be Jianghu. Where there were Jianghu, there would be fights. Since they were going out in a group, there would naturally be a leader. No matter how small the leader was, they would still have to fight for it. However, this battle not only greatly damaged the vitality of the Japanese cultivation world, but also destroyed the arrogance and conceit of the Japanese cultivation world. Compared with other sects, the Ise Shinto had lost the least. None of the great priests and goddesses had died. Although Ise Chumo was seriously injured, the situation was relatively calm at this time. There would be no more battles in a short time, so Ise Chumo's injury could be ignored. A top expert had an extremely great influence on the power of a sect. Because the Tachibana family had merged with the Zhenyan Tantrism, Masako Tachibana had obtained the power of Wisdom King. As a result, the Tachibana family had once ruled the Japanese cultivation world for 10 years. The Zhonyan Tantrism had also risen along with it, surpassing the Tiantai sect and becoming the second largest cultivation sect in Japanese Buddhism. Therefore, it could be said that Ise Shinguang led the team out this time. The Japanese people were utilitarian and practical. If the other party was stronger than them, they would shrink into a ball and endure humiliation. If they were stronger than the other party, they would ride on the other party's neck and defecate. The Ise Shinto was originally one of the top sects in the Japanese cultivation world. After this battle, it was even more outstanding. The two top masters were well preserved. Ise Shinguang and Ise Chumo, both of whom respected Li Yunyang very much in their daily words and deeds, could be regarded as pro-China. Therefore, on this trip, the Japanese people were extremely polite, and there were also some Japanese consortiums that had close ties with the religious world. There were 10 consortiums in the United States, namely Rockefeller, Morgan, First Citibank, DuPont, Boston, Mellon, Cleveland, Chicago, California, and Texas. There were also 6 consortiums in Japan, namely Mitsubishi, Mitsui, Sumitomo, Fuji, Daiichi, and Sanwa. In fact, these consortiums controlled the economic and political lifelines of their respective countries, and even the economic lifelines of the world. They were very powerful. On the surface, these 6 consortiums did not have much contact with the various cultivation sects in Japan, but in fact, these large consortiums had branches of medium-sized consortiums. These medium-sized consortiums had a very close relationship with the various cultivation sects in Japan. It could even be said that many people in these cultivation sects were their worshippers. If there was anything wrong with them, they would go to treat them or become mages. If there was anything unfair, they would even directly act as thugs. The 2 consecutive defeats of the Japanese cultivation world not only shocked the cultivation world, but also affected the forces of these consortiums, which made the big shots of these consortiums extremely shocked. The cultivators went to China to worship the Akalanatha. They were unwilling to be left out, so they followed the cultivators of various sects to China. They wanted to see what the reincarnated Wisdom King, who was famous in Japan, looked like. Did he have 3 heads and 6 arms as the rumor said? But when they ran to Tiannan City in China, they found that the Akalanatha had already left. But when Ise Shinguang and the others asked where Li Yunyang had gone, how could the little foxes who stayed at home tell them? This time, the Japanese came excitedly, and everyone was disappointed. But they reacted quickly, and soon remembered that the reincarnated Wisdom King had opened a tea house with Desanxian in the downtown of Tiannan City. If they went there, they might be able to find him in person. As a result, these Japanese people headed toward the Desanxian in a large group. Yesterday. There was a sudden power outage. After waiting for a while, there was no electricity, so he went straight to bed. When he got up in the morning, he hurriedly finished this chapter. Chapter 904. Feng Na had been very unhappy these past few days. Although she had received a big red envelope during the new year, as the saying goes, the more you get, the more you have to pay. After all, there was no free lunch in the world. After Li Yundong's Desanxian opened a branch in Tiannan City, its business became increasingly prosperous. With its unique business methods and genuine immortal tea skills, coupled with Chen Wankai and the others sparing no effort in pursuing it, Desanxian maintained a unique leading position in the tea business in Tiannan City, which was like a swarm of bees. However, in any industry, if one party was too outstanding, it would be easy to be envied, excluded, or even suppressed. Especially when a business could generate high profits, all kinds of conspiracies and sinister methods would be derived from it. Although Li Yundong had a deep background in Tiannan City, Zhou Qin was by his side to protect him, and Chen Wankai had just become a disciple. This could not stop Li Yundong from not showing up all day long, and he could not stop people with poor eyesight from having some crooked ideas all day long. The business of Desanxian was booming, and its daily performance was unbelievable, but this was not enough to drive many people crazy with jealousy. What really made them jealous was that under Chen Wansai's advice, Feng Na had adopted the V-level system in Desanxian. Especially after the opening of the high-level tea room, some high-ranking officials and dignitaries felt honored to be able to go into the room and drink a cup of tea. It seemed that from then on, they had a little bit of elegance. In this way, the people who went in and out of these high-level tea rooms formed a special group, and because of the existence of Desanxian, there was a lot of communication between this special group. It was just like how a lot of people sharpen their brains to get into Class A. They were not really there to learn about Class A, but to get to know the other elites in the circle. In their eyes, sometimes networking was more important than knowledge. In the same way, after de Sanxian brought up the atmosphere of tea culture in Tiannan City, a large number of high-ranking officials and nobles in Tiannan City went to drink tea almost every day. How much money they drank every day was secondary, but the energy generated by such a group of people together made others extremely jealous. However, these people were jealous, but they could still control themselves. They would not be stupid enough to provoke the owner of this shop, but there were always one or two people who were stupid, especially those who had been in the officialdom since childhood and were deeply influenced by the official culture. Lu Wenle, who had followed his father to Tiannan City, was one of them. Although his father had repeatedly told him to keep a low profile and not cause trouble for his father when he came to Tiannan City to take over as the secretary of the political and legal committee, Lu Wenle had been a devil since he was a child. He was used to being arrogant. He could not bear it anymore after a few days. He followed the trend of Tiannan City's officialdom and came to de Sanxian. When he saw the smart, capable, beautiful and generous Feng Na, he was immediately shocked and swore to get her. The eldest young master Lu naively thought that this tea house was Feng Na's own property. The next day, he came to her casually, pointed at the de Sanxian tea house, and said that he wanted to buy it. He asked Feng Na to make a bid. When Feng Na was an intern at the TV station, she had also seen such a face, but she had never seen such a brazen one. She was polite, but she said that this tea house was not her property and she could not make the decision. When young Master Lu heard this, he was immediately overjoyed. This tea house is not yours? Are you working here? Well, when I buy this tea house, I will give her part of the shares. Won't such a beauty come to me obediently? Young Master Lu's plan was very clever. He did not want to buy this tea house on a whim. He had carefully observed the business of this tea house. Not to mention that it was popular, the key was that high-ranking officials and nobles often came and went. His father had just been parachuted into the officialdom of Tiannan City and was unfamiliar with the place. If he could buy this place, it would be a convenient place for his father to interact with other high-ranking officials and nobles in the future. Most of the interpersonal relationships of China were at the wine table, and it was also feasible at the tea table. Therefore, buying the de Sanxian tea house could not only allow his father to quickly integrate into the officialdom of Tiannan City, but also bring a beauty home. This was really a good idea to kill two birds with one stone. However, after young Master Lu expressed his desire to see the owner of the tea house, Feng Na refused without saying a word. She knew very well that how could Li Yundong sell his painstaking efforts? Even if he had this idea, she had to persuade him. Young Master Lu had hit a wall, but he was not discouraged. He carefully checked Feng Na's information and details, only to find that Feng Na was only from an ordinary middle-class family. Her family was not bad, but it was not surprising. This tea house was also opened by a young man named Li Yundong. After young Master Lu found out that Li Yundong was the behind-the-scenes boss, he subconsciously wanted to go to Li Yundong to discuss the purchase of the tea house. However, these days, Li Yundong was either busy saving the world or saving mankind all day long. He had no time or mind to pay attention to these things. Because he often had to meditate or fight with others, he usually did not take his mobile phone with him. Otherwise, when he was deep in meditation or in the fierce and anxious period of fighting with others, he would be distracted by a phone call at this time. Young Master Lu had been looking for Li Yundong's whereabouts for a few days, but he had not found any trace of him. He thought that Li Yundong was hiding from him. He sneered at the courage of this behind-the-scenes boss and subconsciously wanted to find some people to mess with him. However, a crown prince like eldest young Master Lu might be arrogant and supercilious in daily life, but his starting point was much higher than that of ordinary people. Therefore, even when he was muddle-headed, sometimes his way of doing things and his vision were much higher than that of ordinary people. Although the eldest young Master Lu was arrogant, he still had to find out his opponent's background. But it would be better if he didn't find out. Once he did, he was shocked. Oh my God, it turns out that he also has a strong background. Young Master Lu suddenly felt a little embarrassed. He had just patted his chest and boasted to the beauty. If he stopped at this time and the news spread, how could he stay in Tiannan City? Young Master Lu's father was the secretary of the Political and Legal Committee, which was a key position in the government department. He was a leader with real power and had a very high status. Although he was sent here by air, there would always be some people who wanted to curry favor with him. Therefore, Young Master Lu was naturally the target of the people below him. Young Master Lu usually went out with a lot of people around him. With a casual word, someone would be willing to help him. It was too easy to get a person, especially a person with property. Young Master Lu had been in the officialdom since he was a child. He knew that the best way to deal with the Desanxian was to start from the aspect of health, and it was naturally the Sanitary Bureau that was in charge of health. In order to cover up, young Master Lu could not rush into the Sanitary Bureau and say that he wanted to deal with the Desanxian. He quickly found the Health and Epidemic Prevention Station, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and other units under the Sanitary Bureau. The leaders of the departments above might not necessarily give him face. After all, they were all famous people, but when the people below him saw him, as long as they recognized him, how could they not be polite? What? Young Master Lu is in trouble? Leave it to me. I promise to do it properly for you. Therefore, after a meal, a few glasses of wine, and with the instigation of young Master Lu, a few hotheads swaggered to the door drunk. After all, Feng Na had just graduated from college. How could she know the complexity of society and the sinister nature of people's hearts? In the land of the Celestial Empire, there were 10,000 reasons for officials to punish the people. If they wanted to punish a business, there were 1,000,000 reasons. Especially in the health industry. Although there was an operating standard for whether the industry was clean or not, no matter how standard it was empty talk when it was carried out by F*King people. These people from the Epidemic Prevention Station swaggered to the Desanxian Station and walked around the store. When they came out, they said that the health and safety of the store were not up to standard and needed to be closed for 3 months. This time, Feng Na was dumbfounded. When she took over the Desanxian, it was when the business of the Desanxian began to improve. At this time, many officials in Tiannan City had attended the opening ceremony of the Desanxian, so they all bought the store. She had never been involved in these things. Even if she had a supply of goods or was forced to contact these people because of other disputes, she had been given the green light all the way, and no one had made things difficult for her. But at this time, when she suddenly encountered someone who wanted to clean up the Desanxian, Feng Na was suddenly at a loss. As the saying goes, the king of hell is easy to see, but the little ghosts are difficult to deal with. The ones who were really working were these ordinary law enforcement officers, who usually looked inconspicuous. These people usually had unfathomable connections. If they didn't want the hygiene of a store to pass the standard, they could even find problems in a 9-star restaurant, let alone the Desanxian. Feng Na had never encountered these things before, and she didn't know what to do. She could only watch these law enforcement officers drag their tea sets away. This really made the round-faced beauty so angry that she gritted her teeth behind her back. The female shop assistants in the store were also panicking. They said at the same time, "What should we do? Feng Na, what should we do?" Feng Na didn't know what to do, but Cheng reacted quickly. She blurted out, "Nana, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and find Li Jiandong." Feng Na felt as if she had just woken up from a dream. She immediately grabbed her cell phone and dialed the number. However, no one answered the phone. Cheng saw that no one was answering the phone, so she said, "Call Zhou Qin." Feng Na immediately called Zhou Qin again, but no one answered. She didn't know that Zhou Qin had been cultivating for a long time and had gradually developed many habits of cultivators. If she felt that it would be dangerous to go out, she would never bring her cell phone with her. Feng Na couldn't get through to Zhou Qin's number, so she dialed Zi Yuan's number. However, no one picked up after this round of dialing. Even when she finally dialed Xin Wansai's number, he happened to be on a plane to Thailand to discuss business, and his phone was turned off on the plane. Feng Na had no choice but to call Lin Miao. But what made her crazy was that the phone was quickly hung up. This time, Feng Na was really anxious like an ant on a hot pot. She naturally couldn't figure out where Li Jiandong was now, and Li Jiandong had never expected that when he turned his head to deal with the mystical silver fox, there would be a fire in his backyard and big trouble. Chapter 905. As the saying goes, a cat has its own way, and a mouse has its own way. The tricks in China's officialdom could not be finished in a few days and nights. If eldest young Master Lu wanted to mess with a person, he would probably start from several aspects at the same time, trying to beat the other party so hard that he couldn't fight back, couldn't breathe, and finally begged for mercy. But now, he just sent a few minions of the Health and Epidemic Prevention Station to check the health and safety, which was just a small test. Although eldest young Master Lu did not know Li Yundong's name in the cultivation world, he knew that his background in the secular world was not small. If the other party reacted strongly and had amazing energy, he could push the blame to his subordinates, then set up a table of wine, apologize, and admit that he was a coward. Then it would be fine. Eldest young Master Lu had eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. When I was drinking and eating, I talked nonsense with a few friends. As a result, they took a chicken feather as a token of authority and did something stupid. Eldest young Master Lu. This is actually a misunderstanding. It's really a misunderstanding. As the saying goes, no discord, no concord. Eldest young Master Lu. Please forgive me this time. Eldest young Master Lu had always been flexible. When he sent people out, he even prepared to set up a banquet. He even chose the hotel, which was the Shangyuan Hotel in Tiannan City. However, when eldest young Master Lu paced back and forth at home, waiting for the other party's thunderous counterattack, there was no movement at all. Logically speaking, in this information age, if one's shop was messed with, one should immediately call the boss, and then the boss would fly into a rage and start to mobilize his own energy. After a while, the sky was full of dark clouds and thunder. If one reacted quickly, there would be movement in at most half an hour, and if one reacted slowly, it would not take more than an hour. However, eldest young Master Lu waited at home for nearly 2 hours, but there was no movement at all. It was so quiet that it was unreasonable. Even if a common person was messed with, the other party would still make a scene. There was no reason for the other party to be so quiet after messing with such a tough guy, right? Could it be that I misjudged him? Is he a weakling? Eldest young Master Lu naturally did not expect that the other party was a person who did not carry a mobile phone with him all day long, let alone that the other party could not find anyone who could help him at this time. Under this strange combination of factors, he could not help but come to a conclusion. The other party seemed to be scared. All right, I'll continue messing with him until he makes some noise. After the people from the Health and Epidemic Prevention Station came, the people from the CDC came again. This time, the people who came were wearing white coats and masks. It was as if they were the biological and chemical troops who came to check for virus weapons. It scared the little girls and waiters in the tea house so much that their faces turned green. Feng Na was so angry that her eyes turned black and she almost fainted. She went up to reason with them, but they beat around the bush and played rogue with her. When Cheng Cheng threw caution to the wind and went forward to act wildly, the other side went back to reason with them with a straight face. They were really officials with 2 mouths, but not ordinary people at all. After the group of people left for a while, the people in the nearby shops and onlookers looked at the Desanxian in a different way. They all pointed at the Desanxian. Feng Na's heart was bleeding with hatred. At this time, she really had a feeling that she couldn't call out to anyone. Where on earth had Li Yundong gone? She was really anxious. Li Yundong is a mysterious guy. Where on earth did he go? Feng Na's mobile phone was almost broken. In the end, she wanted to smash it. Seeing that it was not a good thing, she gritted her teeth and said, "No, I'll go to the sanitary bureau by myself. I don't believe that there is no reason in this world." Cheng Cheng quickly grabbed her and said, "Nana, don't go. It's obvious that someone is messing with us. Think about it. Did we offend someone?" Feng Na was stunned. After all, she came from a good family and could not understand so many sinister people. She did not immediately think of the darkest side of things. Now that Cheng Cheng reminded her, she suddenly came to her senses. She turned her head and looked at Cheng Cheng, blurting out, "It can't be Lu Wenla, can it?" Cheng Cheng clapped her hands and immediately said, "It must be him." It would have been better if she hadn't said this. As soon as she said this, the 2 women felt that it must be Lu Wenla's doing. At the beginning, this guy had been so fierce, and now it seemed that he had fulfilled his promise. If Li Yundong was still there, they naturally wouldn't have to worry about such a thing. But the problem was that Li Yundong was not there now, so the 2 of them who had no background really had a big headache and were in a mess. Feng Na thought for a moment, picked up her small bag, stood up, and was ready to go outside. She said, "I'm going to find Lu Wenla." Cheng Cheng's face changed. "Are you crazy? Isn't this like a sheep walking into a tiger's mouth?" Feng Na stamped her feet and said, "This won't work, that won't work. What on earth do you want?" Cheng Cheng gritted her teeth and said, "Why don't we just close for a few days and wait until we get in touch with Li Yundong? Anyway, you can't go to Lu Wunla. Otherwise, even if Lu Wunla stops, what will he do when Li Yundong comes in the future? Do you accept this favor, or not? Do you want to go against him, or what? Although Feng Na's experience was shallow, she was also a smart person. After being reminded by Cheng Cheng, she immediately came to a realization. If she went and Lu Wunla gave up, then she would owe him a favor. Although it was very likely that this matter was caused by Lu Wunla, this kind of thing absolutely could not be said. Otherwise, if they shed all pretense of cordiality, then something even more terrible would happen. Once she owed a favor, how could she return it in the future? Pay a debt of love with her body? Bah, he should look in the mirror. No matter how she thought about it, in the end, this debt would still fall on Li Yundong's head. Therefore, Feng Na knew that she absolutely could not go. Feng Na sighed and sat down in frustration. She pressed her hand to her forehead and said in a low voice, "Forget it. Let's close the door first. Everyone should rest for the next few days." Some of the female students who had not yet realized the seriousness of the situation said anxiously, "Nana, if we don't open the door for a day, we will lose a lot of money." At this time, Cheng Cheng turned her head and said angrily, "Money, money, all you think about is money. It's not like we don't owe you a penny. What are you afraid of?" The girl who had spoken before suddenly blushed. The girl next to her couldn't stand it anymore, so she said, "That's not true. Nana, Li Yundong has been so kind to us. We have long regarded de Sanxian as one of us and another home. Now that we see such a situation, we all feel bad in our hearts." At this time, Feng Na also stood up to smooth things over. She forced a smile and said, "Let's not talk about it. Let's take a few days off and wait for Li Yundong to come. Just take it as a holiday to make up for the new year." For a moment, everyone was in a low mood, but there was no good way, so they scattered in all directions. Just as they were about to leave and Feng Na and Cheng Cheng were about to close the door, they saw a group of people outside. Most of them were in suits. The man in the lead walked over and said in a non-standard Chinese accent, "Excuse me, is this de Sanxian?" Cheng Cheng was in a bad mood. She opened her mouth and said rudely, "Don't you know how to look up at the plaque?" Feng Na immediately pulled her and glared at her. Then she turned back and said politely, "Yes, do you want tea? Unfortunately, today is the closing day of the shop. Can you come back another day?" Closing day? The man in the lead was none other than Ise Shunguang. He looked around strangely and saw that all the other shops were bustling, but the de Sanxian was about to close. Ise Shunguang felt strange in his heart, but he didn't think too much about it. He asked with a smile, "Is Wisdom King here?" "Wisdom King?" Feng Na was stunned and asked in confusion, "Who is Wisdom King?" A girl next to Ise Shunguang suddenly rushed to say in an even more non-standard Chinese accent, "It's Li Yundong. Is he here?" This girl was one of the representatives of the chaebols who had come with the Japanese cultivation group. She was the heiress of the Tanaka Group, a medium-sized consortium under the Mitsui Consortium. It was said to be a medium-sized consortium, but in fact, it was equivalent to the Mitsui Group. If this consortium was placed in any country, it would be a giant. The power of this consortium radiated to the business circles, political circles, gangs, and religious circles of Japan. They even manipulated the Japanese elections behind the scenes. This girl's name was Tanaka Misa, and she was the fourth heir of the Tanaka family. In the future, she would be in charge of inheriting the food business of the Tanaka Consortium. Their family had always believed in Ise Shinto, and she was very beautiful. She had a very close relationship with the goddess, Ise Chuyun. She often visited the Ise Grand Shrine and often drank tea and ate with Shunguang and Chuyun. Their family had been worshipping the Ise Shinto for generations, so the relationship between the two was very close. Therefore, when Shunguang and Chuyun talked about Taoism, they did not avoid this Miss Tanaka at all. When Tanaka Misa heard that they were going to visit a person in China and that their words were full of praise for this person, she couldn't help but be very curious. She knew that Ise Chuyun was famous for being arrogant and had no respect for anyone. Ise Shunguang looked sloppy on the outside, but in fact, he was reserved and conceited. It was not easy for him to praise a person. But at this time, when she heard the two of them praise Li Yundong like a flower, she couldn't help but be very curious. When she went back to investigate, she found out what earth-shattering things Li Yundong had done. He had single-handedly defeated the joint attack of the Japanese cultivation world, and then defeated the arrogant Tamamo with Xueqi, the three immortals, and the cultivators of the cultivation world of China and Japan. No matter how smart a woman in the world was, no matter how high her status and background was, it was inevitable that she would be curious when she encountered such a thing. Tanaka Misa was also a beautiful young girl. After spending a long time with Ise Chuyun, it was inevitable that she would feel that all men in the world were dirt. She felt that no man could catch her eye. But at this time, Li Yundong had appeared, and he was very young and handsome. God, how could I, Tanaka Misa, only know about such a legendary figure today? No, I have to go and have a look. So, she followed him and even learned a few words of China at the last minute. When she asked this question, Feng Na was stunned for a moment. Then, she shook her head and looked a little sad. No, he is not here. Ah. The Japanese were suddenly stirred up. What? We came here from thousands of miles away. It's fine if we can't see Wisdom King himself at the door of his house, but we can't even see him here? Tanaka Misa was even more disappointed. She immediately asked, Are you one of the three immortals? It took Feng Na a lot of effort to understand the meaning of her half-baked China language. She said blankly, One of the three immortals? Are you referring to the sick system in this shop? Tanaka Misa felt that her conversation with this girl was a little out of place. They had rushed all the way here, and they had not been able to find Feng Na twice in a row. She was a little anxious and annoyed, but she was a businessman after all, and her observation skills were sharp. Soon, she discovered that the atmosphere in the tea house was gloomy, and Feng Na was frowning. Tanaka Misa couldn't help but ask, What happened? However, she didn't know how to say this in China language. She just said it in Japanese, and Ise Chuyun, who was next to her, translated it for her in a low voice. Feng Na saw that Ise Chuyun was extremely beautiful, and her temperament was even more outstanding. She was not inferior to Su Chan, Zi Yuan, or Zhou Qin at all. She knew that a woman with such a temperament must not be an ordinary person, so she calmed down and said, It's nothing. I'm just preparing to close the shop. As the saying goes, don't wash your dirty linen in public. If such a thing had happened in the shop, they would have to cover it up in front of their own people, let alone in front of the Japanese. However, Feng Na didn't expect that the business of Desanxian was so prosperous that it had already aroused the envy of many people. Immediately, some onlookers said gloatingly, The tea house is about to close. How can it be okay? Hurry up and do some cleaning, or else you'll drink something dirty. That would be bad. Cheng Cheng was furious when she heard this. She was about to step forward to argue, but Feng Na stepped on her foot and motioned for her not to be impulsive. At this time, Ise Shinguang also asked curiously, Did something happen? We are friends of His Highness Li Yunyang. That is, the Wisdom King. Tell us, it might be helpful. Feng Na bit her lip and felt strange in her heart. His Highness? The Wisdom King? Who on earth is Li Yunyang? Her hesitation made Cheng Cheng, who was next to her, anxious. She couldn't hold back her temper and rushed to tell them what had happened. When the Japanese people heard this, they immediately stirred up and whispered to each other. Tanaka Misa was even more disappointed. She hadn't expected that the so-called hero in her mind was a good-for-nothing who couldn't even manage his own business. Tanaka Misa couldn't help curling her lips and saying, He can't even manage a small tea house well. This person is not a hero at all. == a chapter of 4,000 words. Yesterday's second chapter. There will be another chapter later. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.